Hello, hidden gems. Missed you last night. Yesterday, we were in Flagstaff, Arizona, and we were the courtroom camera for the Sam Bateman sentencing. If you remember Sam Bateman from Trust Me, a False Prophet. His victims gave the most compelling, heartbreaking, and heart-lifting victim impact statements. We are working on getting those as well. So again, hit subscribe, hit notification. Thank you for supporting us. And we will have a lot of that shortly. I also posted earlier today an interview with a woman, a friend of mine, who has experienced postpartum psychosis, and she shares her experience. So I hope you watch that as well. And today, to not bury the lead, the prosecution rested officially. Tomorrow are closing arguments, closing statements. So let's go over the last 2 days. We'll start with Tuesday and go through today. So Tuesday picked back up with ADA Sprague's direct examination of Dr. Kirk Heilbrunn. And Sprague started by asking about peritraumatic disassociation, something that can happen during an extremely frightening or traumatic event. And Heilbrunn explained that a person might feel like what's happening isn't real, or almost like they're watching themselves go through it. And while they can sound psychotic, he said it's actually a recognized response to trauma. And he believed that Lindsay showed signs of this during the killings. And she described feeling like it wasn't really her, and that she was simply responding to the voice and taking action. But Heilbrunn pushed back on that idea, that there was no decision-making involved. Okay, he said the killings took roughly 18 to 20 minutes, and during that time, multiple decisions had to be made: where it would happen, which child would be killed first, what to say to keep them from panicking, how each child would be strangled, what would be used, and in what order. He said that Lindsay also had to make decisions about how she would attempt to take her own life. And from there, Sprague brought the jury back to the two possibilities that Heilbrunn had laid out the day before. One second. I want to show this. I'm going to pull it up here.
And yesterday, when you went through the two options that you considered, that this was psychosis with command hallucinations or suicide with altruistic filicide, is your testimony that it's either or it's one or the other?
It's my testimony that those were the two possibilities that seemed to have some evidence. But at the end of talking to her, testing, reviewing all the information, doing the collateral interviews, everything I did as a part of this evaluation, the evidence much more strongly, in my opinion, supported the second explanation, which was the serious suicide attempt accompanied by killing the children out of love.
So Sprague then turned to Heilbrunn's 3 days of interviews with Lindsay and a change that he noticed by day 3. During the first 2 days, he said Lindsay was attentive and responsive, and her memory was good, especially considering more than 3 years had passed. She remembered dates, medications, dosages, times, and other details. But on day 3, when they started discussing her mental state during the killings, Heilbrunn said that Lindsay became much more cautious and guarded. He started hearing, "I don't remember," and "I don't recall" more often. Sprague then brought up something Lindsay wrote after waking up at Brigham and Women's Hospital. She was intubated and could not speak, so staff had her write her answers. And when asked about her mood, Lindsay wrote one word, quote, "horrified." But when Heilbrunn asked her about that during the third interview, Lindsay said she did not remember writing it or why she would have felt horrified. Sprague then pointed to another statement in those hospital records. Lindsay reportedly told a treatment provider that she believed she needed to kill the children because they would suffer without her.
That statement.
And when you asked her about it on the third day of interviewing her, did she recall that statement?
Yes, that statement in Brigham and Women's to the attending psychiatrist was made in the context of her thinking about what happened. Well, let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, she was asked about what the voice had said on that afternoon, and her response was, it had said, you have to kill yourself so you can kill the kids. It also said the kids will suffer without you. And when I asked her about that, whether the voice had said that, she said, no, the voice only said, this is your last chance. You have to kill the kids so you can kill yourself.
So I'm going to move to strike this, not this point.
No, overruled. A lot.
So the two differences where at Brigham, she's saying the voice said, you have to kill yourself so you can kill the children, and that the children would suffer without her, versus after that when she says the voice only said, you have to kill the kids so you can kill yourself, is the fact that she's giving two different statements significant in your evaluation?
As I talked about in my testimony yesterday, when there is inconsistency, that's something that alerts me to the possibility of inaccuracy. And two statements that are mutually exclusive or inconsistent suggest to me that there is a problem. One of them, at least, is not accurate.
So, another important piece of evidence that Heilbrunn was Lindsay's phone call with Patrick during the time frame of the killings. Patrick called at 5:53. Remember that? Lindsay missed that call, but called him right back at 5:34. Heilbrunn said that stood out because it interrupted what was otherwise a crucial period of time, right? And gave investigators a very precise timestamp. He had also interviewed Patrick, who said Lindsay sounded distracted, like she was in the middle of something, but not unusually different. As Patrick explained, she was often in the middle of something while home with 3 kids. The call also helped narrow down the timing. Patrick left around 5:15 and returned around 6 o'clock, putting that phone call almost directly in the middle. Sprague then asked whether Heilbrunn saw anything suggesting that Lindsay was focused on herself or her future. He pointed to hospital records showing that several days later, Lindsay was becoming more future-oriented, right, and beginning to think about what her life might look like going forward. But Heilbrunn said he did not interpret that as Lindsay being self-centered.
And is there any significance to that state of mind or those thoughts in your evaluation of her?
Well, I don't think that she was in any way over this or thinking only about herself. It's something that I noticed when I evaluated her in April, is that she is still grieving. She's still in mourning for those kids. And she used language like, I have lost everything and I don't want to be here. So I would not think of Lindsay Clancy as someone who is really self-centered or oriented only to herself. She is grieving her children.
And you mentioned yesterday the emphasis she had on control of thought and control of her life. How did that come into play in your evaluation in terms of what was done here?
One of the considerations is why she got to the point where she decided to take her own life. And she's an individual who, for most of her life, has been disciplined and liked to control things, liked to work hard, liked to accomplish things. And one of the things that was striking about what happened with her between October and January is that she seemed to be doing her best, talking to the doctors, talking to the therapists, working on trying to get things accomplished in terms of lessening the anxiety and getting the right medications, and it wasn't working, and she couldn't help make it work. She could not control that through hard work and discipline and so on. And that had to be very frustrating, and I think got her to the point where it was very difficult for her to actually think about not being hopeless and going on with her life and so on.
Now, doctor, did you form an opinion to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty as to whether or not the defendant was suffering from a mental disease or defect at the time she killed her children?
I did, yes.
And what is that opinion?
That opinion is yes, she was. She was experiencing bipolar II disorder, depressive symptoms, and there were other things that were exacerbating that, making it worse. One is the sleep problems and the probably the continued adverse reactions to medication and so on. But yes, in my opinion, she did have a mental disease or defect on January 24th.
And doctor, to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty, did you form an opinion as to whether or not the defendant appreciated the criminality or wrongfulness of her conduct when she killed her children?
I did, yes. And I'm at the end of my report, I was very careful about how I phrased this. And so
Sustained. If you could just answer the question regarding your opinion.
So yes, you formed an opinion?
I did, yes.
And what is that opinion?
That opinion is that she retained an awareness of the illegality of killing others, including killing her children. Her moral awareness of the wrongfulness of this killing was influenced by her strong desire to die and, if she were dead, not to leave her children behind. Some of this perception was realistic. For example, my children will suffer without me because they would have suffered, I think. And some of it was distorted. For example, nobody else can care for my children. But her awareness of the illegality and moral wrongfulness of such killing is best appraised by understanding these acts as a serious suicide attempt combined with altruistic filicide, killing her children out of love, rather than as a response to command hallucinations.
And did you form an opinion to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty as to whether Ms. Clancy was able to conform her conduct to the requirements of the law when she killed her children?
Yes.
And what is that opinion?
That her capacity to conform a conduct to the requirements of the law is, again, best understood by considering the seriousness of her suicide attempt and her strong desire not to leave her children. She demonstrated such self-control throughout the day on January 24th, and her actions between 5:15 and 6 p.m. that afternoon were influenced by her depression and her hopelessness about her life and the desire to end the pain she had experienced since October. Although this depression and hopelessness influenced her decisions, she retained control over whether, when, and how she carried it out, and the inclusion of her children.
And doctor, did you form an opinion to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty as to whether or not the defendant was criminally responsible when she killed her children?
Yes.
And what is that opinion?
My opinion, my clinical opinion, since I'm not the decision maker here, but my clinical opinion is that she was criminally responsible on January 24th.
Thank you. Your Honor, I'd move to submit the PowerPoint for identification.
I'm sorry?
I'd move to submit the PowerPoint
Oh,
for identification.
for identification. Okay, thank you. That may be done.
It's easy, right?
Attorney.
Sorry. Doctor, I'd just like to ask you about one of the things you just said to this jury that apparently stood out in your mind, and that would be the dichotomy or the difference between two statements that Lindsay made, one being, I believe, in the hospital, and you felt that there was a subsequent statement that was made by her that contradicted that, or was different from that, and that would be after 3 days of you and Mac testing her. Is that right? Can you just say, is it right or wrong?
Mr. Reddington, it's not quite right.
Okay, why don't we do it this way?
Yeah.
You just told this jury that Lindsay made a statement to you at the conclusion of the 3 days that you and Mac were questioning her and testing her and interviewing her. Is that fair? Yes or no?
What I would say is,
Yes or no?
no.
Did you tell this jury, in addition, that Lindsay made a different statement when she was in the hospital? Yes or no?
What I said to the jury
I'm
is,
asking you, sir, did you make that statement to this jury?
what I intended to
No,
say,
not what you intended. Can you answer my question? Yes or no?
no.
Now, is Dr. Helbron aware of the concept of post-intensive care syndrome?
Post-intensive care syndrome.
Yeah, PICS. It's called PICS.
No, I have not heard of post-intensive care syndrome.
Dr. Helbron aware of when a person is coming out of major surgery and has been subject to anesthesia, that it is known that they have delusions, hallucinations, make statements that don't make sense. Are you aware of that, sir?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
And is that from your personal experience, professional experience? Because you didn't know what PICS was when they asked you, right?
Yes, it's not from my personal experience or my professional experience.
You received a notification to evaluate Lindsay Clancy on this criminal case from the district attorney's office, right?
Yes.
All right, I'm here, guys. All right. So, Reddington then turned to how much Heilbrunn was being paid, since the state had asked the defense experts the same question. So Heilbrunn said he bills $300 an hour, and he has already spent about 180 hours on the case before coming to Plymouth. That's roughly $54,000 so far, with the total continuing to increase through his testimony. Reddington also established what Heilbrunn received from the defense, including Dr. Resnick's video interview with Lindsay and notes and reports from Dr. Margaret Spinelli and Dr. Paul Zeisel. But despite Reddington telling Heilbrunn to reach out with any questions, the two had never actually spoken before the day of Heilbrunn's testimony. So Reddington then spent quite a bit of time going through Heilbrunn's background, and his CV is nearly 70 pages long, his curriculum vitae. So Heilbrunn is a clinical psychologist affiliated with Park Dietz and Associates. Yes, that Park Dietz, the one who was partly responsible for the appeal in Andrew Yates' case, and then it was ultimately overturned, and then in her new trial, she was found innocent because of insanity. That's Park Dietz. So anyway, his forensic work spans, excuse me, my goodness. Hold on. His forensic work spans decades. Reddington did ask specifically about his experience with postpartum psychosis. Heilbrunn recalled working at Florida State Hospital in 1982 with a therapy group of 4 or 5 severely mentally ill women who had killed their children. Reddington emphasized that that was more than 40 years ago, and from there he walked through Heilbrunn's extensive experience, work involving the FBI, Bureau of Prisons, Department of Justice, violent risk assessments, juvenile justice, forensic evaluations, competency to stand trial, and workshops for prosecutors, defense attorneys, and judges. So by the end, the jury had heard about more than 130 lectures and workshops, along with numerous publications, books, chapters, and articles. And one title in particular, caught Reddington's attention. It's a publication called, quote, Handling Difficult Cross-Examinations.
Been a fair amount of juvenile work and
Handling difficult cross-examination, integrating perspectives, combining substance with style, and learning. What does that mean? Handling difficult cross-examination.
well, one of the things that people as forensic psychologists need to do is convey what they have done in a way that is effective. And so there are things that you,
To a jury?
to a jury, to a judge, to an attorney, various kinds of,
Well, when you're dealing with an attorney, sir, you're presenting information to the attorney. You're not dealing with difficult cross-examination, are you?
could you repeat the question, please?
Sure, you wrote about handling difficult cross-examination, integrating perspectives, combining substance with style.
Yes.
And what is, 25 words or less, what is that basically telling people? How to, what, withstand cross-examination?
It's how most effectively to convey the results of the evaluation that you have done.
And then, again, just hundreds of articles on topics that the jurors can look at because your resume is in evidence. Finishing it off on that end, sexual abuse behavior, juvenile forensic mental health, violence risk assessment of juveniles, behavioral measure of sexual offense behavior, influencing third-party informant observations dealing with juveniles. Should the courts coerce offenders into substance abuse treatment? Is there one article, one, that you wrote about a woman who is pregnant, who is undergoing postpartum depression, and God forbid, psychosis?
No.
But you did write an article 49 years ago. You published an article on psychosis in 1977 with your dad. Before, well, you were in college, apparently, right? Right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was
okay,
his
so
research assistant at that time when
Yeah.
I was in college, yes.
Okay. And this is before you entered graduate school, and you used a diagnostic framework that no longer exists, didn't you, back then?
It was a long time ago.
Right. And actually, it was 3 years before the DSM was even written. DSM-1, back in the Stone Age.
It was a while ago.
That's the only article you ever wrote dealing with that issue. Is that correct, sir?
Dealing with what issue, sir?
Postpartum psychosis.
Ah. Yes.
Does I mean yes? Thank you. So, you make arrangements with the district attorney's office to get all this discovery that I sent you, that the DA sent you, police reports that you went through with the jury, and you read it, right?
Yes, that's right.
And you must have talked to the DAs before you saw Lindsay, right?
Yes.
Okay. How many times?
I don't remember how many times.
Well, you billed them for it, I'll bet, right?
Anytime I spend on a case like this, I record and it gets billed.
Of course. So you do have records, but who cares at this point? I mean, you're here testifying based on your opinion at the request of the prosecutors, right?
I'm here based on, yes, at this point, I've completed the evaluation and don't remember things like how many times I talked to the DAs. That's part of it.
But basically, in your conversations with these two prosecutors, sir, did you talk to the state police at all, detectives?
I reviewed a massive amount of reports, some by the state police, some by other individuals. So I reviewed records for many, many hours.
And when you got involved with this case 3 years later, or 2.5 years later, you'd agree with me that it was quite publicized, right?
Yes, I would agree with that.
You've heard of confirmation bias, I'm sure, right?
I have indeed.
Yes. And however many times you talked to the DAs and reviewed the information, would you agree with me, sir, that before you met with Lindsay in Tewksbury, you pretty much had an idea that this woman was a beast, killed her 3 kids, didn't you?
I would not agree with you at all.
So you had an open mind when you went in there to Tewksbury to see and speak to for 3 days, Lindsay Clancy?
I did my best to have an open mind, yes.
You told us yesterday you had some difficult decisions to make, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. So when did you first meet Avram?
When did I first meet him?
Yeah.
That probably would have been late 2025, early 2026.
Okay. Around the same time that you first got involved with the case?
No, it would have been considerably after I first got involved with the
Where did
case.
you meet him?
Where did I meet him?
That's what I said. Where did you meet him?
Virtually.
Oh, virtually.
Yes.
Okay. So it's like a Zoom thing or
Yeah.
FaceTime or something.
Exactly.
You ever meet him in person before you went to Tewksbury?
No, I didn't.
So did you guys have a plan to meet up somewhere before you went to evaluate Lindsay?
In the lobby of the hospital.
Did you stay somewhere the night before?
I did, yes.
Yeah, where'd you stay?
I don't remember.
You don't remember? Were you with Mac that night?
No,
No? Did you stay in a private house?
no.
You stay in a hotel?
Yes, I did.
Wasn't a van down by the river, for sure, right?
I don't remember the name of the hotel, but it was a hotel in
All
Tewksbury.
right. So you're in a hotel, you meet with Abram Mack in the parking lot, and then you go into Tewksbury Hospital to meet with this young lady, right?
Correct.
And the two of you, day number one, you spend how many hours, the two of you, questioning her?
4.5.
And day number two, you don't bring Mac with you, you're by yourself, and you administer the psychological testing, correct?
Correct.
And how long was that, sir?
3 hours.
And day number three, how long did you speak to Lindsay in the hospital?
3 hours.
So what was your total period of time over a 3-day period that this young woman was dealing with you and Abram Mack?
10.5 hours.
So for 10.5 hours, this young lady is in a room, in a wheelchair, being questioned by you and Abram Mack while she's on medication, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And she was still answering your questions, trying to be cooperative and being affable and friendly, you put in your report, right?
Yes, that's right.
Did at any time she express to you that she was tired and wanted to take a break?
We offered her in the beginning.
My question, sir, was,
Action, if you could answer.
oh, he's not gonna, he's gonna,
No, hold on. Would you ask the specific question, Doctor, if you listen to that question, okay?
my question, sir, was at any time, did you or Abram Mack offer to her to take a break?
Yes.
Did she accept that offer?
Once she did, and once she did not.
And basically indicated that she wanted to get through this interview and get it over with, right?
Yes.
You weren't her buddy going there to talk to her those 3 days, were you?
No.
She knew that you were there on behalf of the district attorney's office to testify against her in a trial and say to a jury that she knew and was able to conform to the law. She killed her 3 kids. Isn't that right?
No, that's not right.
So
All right. In a van down by the river. For those that are too young to know that van down by the river, it's a classic joke. Saturday Night Live, Chris Farley, R.I.P. Chris Farley. You were hilarious and made us all laugh. But a van down by the river, an SNL or Saturday Night Live joke. It was so good. It was so funny. All right. The questioning then returned to Heilbrun's diagnosis. He confirmed Lindsay had bipolar II disorder, which he considered a serious mental disease. Reddington focused on how Heilbrun had described Lindsay before the killings: hardworking, highly disciplined and motivated. He asked whether she was controlling. Heilbrun said that depended on what he meant by controlling. Reddington gave the example of a mother leaving very, very detailed instructions for a babysitter, down to how small to chop the carrots and how to prepare the chicken nuggets. Heilbrun agreed that showed discipline and a certain amount of control, but said he wasn't using those traits for or against Lindsay. He was simply trying to understand the overall picture of her behavior, thoughts, feelings, and symptoms. Reddington then highlighted Lindsay's background. She was a good student, earned excellent grades, highly motivated through college and nursing school. Heilbrun acknowledged that he had not interviewed Lindsay's former coworkers or reviewed her employment evaluations from Massachusetts General Hospital. Reddington asked if he would describe Lindsay as an incredible mother. Heilbrun said that he would describe her as a very good mother. And Reddington tried to make it broader, a broader point, that throughout this trial, outside of the state's case, there's been very, very little negative testimony about Lindsay as a wife or as a mother.
Yes.
And in fact, sir, in the past 6 weeks or 5 weeks, there hasn't been one person that's had one thing bad to say about her other than these two. Isn't that right?
Sustained.
Did anybody, to your knowledge, come into this court in front of this jury and say that Lindsay Clancy was a bad wife?
I don't know.
How about bad mother?
Again, I don't know.
So in your readings about her as a mother, you were able to see that she would sing to her daughter when she put her to bed. That's in the reports. You read the reports, right?
You might have to ask me that question.
You know Rascal Flatts?
I'm sorry?
Rascal Flatts. You ever heard of them?
No.
Okay. So if I suggest to you, sir, that Lindsay would sing to her daughter every night, is that important to you in your evaluation?
Yes.
You didn't know that, though, apparently, right?
I knew that she was very good with her kids, paid a lot of attention to them, spent a lot of time with them, and really enjoyed it.
Even right up to within hours of their killing, she was making snowmen with them, right?
Yes, she was playing with the two older children out in the backyard.
And then bringing her life experience, which you testified yesterday that she never had any abuse in her life, was raised by loving mother and father, good student, hard worker, great mother, good friend, wonderful wife. She then randomly decides to kill her children by strangling them. It's the facts we're dealing with. Yes, sir, right?
No, not right.
So one of the things you testified to yesterday is that, and you went like this and said that this is difficult, but then you were able to power through and tell the jury that Lindsay didn't like to leave her kids alone. She got anxious about that. Remember telling that to the jury?
I do.
And this is one of the things that you kind of hang your hat on that you felt was important in your evaluation, right?
It was important. It was an important part of my evaluation that she did not like to leave her kids, and it made her anxious. Yes.
That's not a bad thing, is it? For a mother not to want to leave her children and be anxious when they're out of her home, right?
Well, it depends. It could be difficult and so on, depending on how anxious and even disabling it was, if she just couldn't leave her kids. But on the other hand, if it just reflected that she was close to them and wanted to be with them and wasn't a problem or disabling, then it's not a problem.
Did you know, sir, that Pat's mother and father would come over to the house and babysit for the kids when Lindsay and her husband would go out to dinner or go out to a movie or go out with their friends? Did you know that, sir?
Yes.
Did you know that the children were actually in learning Sprouts school? Did you know that?
Yes.
Heilbrunn said Lindsay's anxiety about leaving her children was another important piece of the puzzle when evaluating her mental state. He focused on just how significant the anxiety really was. Heilbrunn explained that not wanting to leave your children is not inherently concerning. It becomes an issue if the anxiety is so severe that it interferes with your ability to function. And Lindsay did leave her children. Her parents babysat so she and Patrick could go to dinner, see movies, or spend time with friends. The children also attended Little Sprouts. Heilbrunn said Lindsay did experience anxiety at drop-off, particularly when the children cried. Patrick had described the same thing. He told Heilbrunn that Lindsay sometimes struggled to leave the kids, including on their 5th anniversary date night, but they still went out. Reddington then went back to Lindsay's treatments and medications. Heilbrunn agreed that Lindsay was initially reluctant to take an SSRI because she was breastfeeding, right? Remember that? And worried about the medication getting into her breast milk. So once she stopped breastfeeding, she began taking it, and her dosage was later increased. Then Reddington went back to the summer of 2022.
That before the end of September of 2022, this young woman was living her life with her husband and her kids. Summer of 22, happy, had a great time. Do you agree with that, sir?
I do.
And when she saw Tufts from September end up until the killing of these children and the state of her condition that you told the jury was confusing. You remember using that word yesterday? It was confusing with these number of diagnoses that she dealt with.
Yes, I did use that word.
And the confusing with the number of drugs that was one drug on top of another drug, and stop this drug, start that drug. That was confusing, wasn't it, sir?
Yes, it was.
And it was a confusing and upsetting to her and her husband, to the point where they went to these doctors and said to them, you're turning her into a zombie, right?
Yes, that's right.
But prior to seeing Tufts and the other healthcare providers, she was a happy woman, wasn't she?
She was in many respects happy, pleased with her life. So she wasn't happy in an unqualified way, but she was, yes, she was very happy with certain aspects of her life.
So as September turns into October, middle of October or thereabouts, how is she doing at that point between her depression, anxiety, drugs prescribed? How is she doing?
She was anxious about going back to work, but she hadn't started taking the drugs that were prescribed.
Okay, let him finish. Go ahead. Go ahead, Doc.
Yes. In September, she was anxious about returning to work. She had not yet started taking the medications that Dr. Tufts had prescribed, though.
How about a text that she had sent to her mother on October 20th, sir? I know you indicate in your report you had a chance to review all of the computer searches, text messages, Apple Watches, all that stuff, right?
Yes, that's right.
All right. Read that text, please. October 20th. This is a text that she sent to her mother. Read it.
Would you like me to read it out loud?
I'd like you to read it out loud.
All right. Mom, will you please come up and stay with me for a bit? I'm really sick. Something is wrong. I had horrible insomnia all night, and I just don't know how I'm going to get through the day. I started taking the medicine my doctor prescribed for anxiety, and I think it's made things worse. It's just really scary, and I don't want to be alone.
Did her mother come up the next day and stay with her?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at the records.
I'm sure. Do you know, sir, that she actually climbed into the bed with her mother to sleep with her mother when the mother was staying with her during this period of time?
No, I didn't know that.
So Reddington then moved into November when Lindsay's problems with sleep had become significant. Her mother-in-law, Sue Clancy, who was also a labor and delivery nurse, helped connect Lindsay with another provider, Julie Paul. Lindsay met with her before Paul left the position about a week later and then began seeing Nurse Gelada. Remember, Heilbrunn agreed that insomnia was actually one of Lindsay's first complaints after starting medication in October. Lindsay believed the medications were affecting her badly. At one point, she even described feeling like they were damaging her brain. But she still had hope. She wanted to get back to feeling like herself. But instead, things got worse. And by late November, Lindsay said that she was close to the end of my rope. An analogy Reddington acknowledged was particularly unfortunate given what ultimately happened. She described feeling off, disconnected, and almost zombie-like. She reported panic symptoms, disorientation, forgetfulness, and feeling disconnected from her own body and from other people. Heilbrunn agreed that Lindsay described being in a dissociative state and believed medication was contributing to it. Then came December, which Heilbrunn described as probably Lindsay's worst month. She was reporting horrible, intrusive thoughts, including thoughts of harming herself and at times, thoughts of harming her children. And that led Reddington to another major question. How thoroughly did anyone treating Lindsay actually explore what those thoughts meant? I have the same question.
Are they coming from inside your head? Are they male voices? Are they female voices? Anybody ask anything about thoughts, what they were? According to the medical records, not according to your guess.
That's a standard kind of question when you're
My
being
question, sir, is you read the medical records.
No, overruled.
Can you answer that question based on Dr. Heilbrunn's review of the medical records of what this young lady went through in that hell that she was living?
Is your question, did someone ask her about hallucinations?
Yeah, if I come
thoughts?
to you for help and I say, I've got intrusive thoughts about killing myself, and God forbid, I'm thinking about killing my kids, I've got these thoughts in my head, would you ask me? Voices. thoughts? What are they? Does anybody ask that question?
Yes, that's a standard question that psychiatrists ask at the beginning of each appointment. It's a standard mental status question.
Did any one of those psychiatrists ask Lindsay Clancy that question, according to the medical records? Anyone?
Ms. Clancy completed the answer to those questions
What
on
question?
a number of occasions,
Sir,
if I
what
might.
questions?
No, well, go ahead.
What
No,
questions?
Finish that question, and I'll let you have that question.
Okay.
Finish the answer.
Questions such as, are you hearing voices? If so, describe those and so on. And the typical response that she gave as part of a question like that was no.
How about when someone says, I've got dark thoughts? Does anybody, professionals, ask, what are the dark thoughts?
If somebody said, I'm having dark thoughts, then the follow-up question would be, tell me more. What are the thoughts? Tell me, just give me some descriptions of what you're having, what you're thinking, what it's like, and so on.
So if a patient goes to a doctor and says, I'm having these intrusive thoughts, I'm having dark thoughts, I'm having thoughts of, and at the same time frame in December, she's talking about harming the children, correct?
She said that those thoughts had come to her at times.
At times.
Yes.
And she mentioned that to her husband, didn't she?
That's what she said, yes.
She mentioned, did you talk to her husband about it?
Yes, I did talk to her husband.
Tell you that she said that to him?
Yes.
A couple of times she said it to him, right?
A couple of times she said, I'm having thoughts, and he asked her, give me more detail if you could, and she said, they're just thoughts, it's not a plan, that sort of thing.
You got this girl living in her house with her kids, saying she's having dark thoughts, saying she's thinking of harming the children, and Patrick's response, according to your testimony, is just basically just power through it, you'll be okay?
Objection.
No, overruled.
Huh?
No, that was not his response as he described it. He asked more questions because one of the things that she had been dealing with for some time are thoughts about hurting herself and possibly the kids. And so what he did was try to get more information about the details. He asked questions that a mental health professional would also ask, which is how often, what are they like? Do you have a plan? Things like that. And she pretty consistently said, no, I don't have a plan. And this is how often it happens, but they're just thoughts.
So let's talk about that, because that's apparently the standard reaction if a patient comes to a doctor and says, I'm having dark thoughts, intrusive thoughts, I'm thinking of hurting myself, I'm thinking of hurting the kids. You say, do you have a plan? That's the question you ask, right?
That's one of the questions that you ask,
And
yes.
the person says, nah, I don't have a plan. I'm just having these thoughts. And you just basically move on, give them more drugs. What do you do?
No, you don't move on. You're aware that the person has reported having those thoughts, and you've appraised the risk, and the risk has to do with things like how imminent is it? How serious is it? Are there means? How is there a plan? What sort of detail is involved, and so on? And so basically, what you do at that point is you take it seriously, but you also try to describe how seriously to take it.
So Reddington established that Lindsay had been reporting these intrusive thoughts. And when she was asked whether they were her own thoughts or auditory hallucinations, Lindsay said they were her own, but they were unwanted and they were intrusive. Halburn agreed that Lindsay appeared to answer those questions honestly and cooperated with the evaluation. He saw no indication that she was trying to fabricate what she was experiencing. And then December 15th, a day Lindsay described as literally one of the worst days of her life. Her symptoms intensified, thoughts becoming harder to manage. Patrick taking her to the hospital.
As a result of that, her husband, Pat, took her to the hospital, right?
Correct.
And you indicated that it looked like she was having general anxiety symptoms, right? That's your testimony yesterday.
It looked from what the records reflected that anxiety was something that they were focusing on her experiencing.
And then you said in your testimony, but not so much the postpartum. What does that mean?
It means that in December, she would have been 7 months away from giving birth to Callan. And consequently, it was less likely to be postpartum than depression for other reasons, or bipolar or major depression or something like that, rather than postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis, something like that.
Because you know that postpartum is not a medical diagnosis. That's just the fact that you had a baby, right?
I do know that, yes.
Okay. And when she went to that hospital, did they provide any help for her or any medication, or what happened on December 15th?
She did not stay in the hospital very long, and so no, she didn't remain there long enough to get the kind of help that you would usually get on an inpatient basis.
But the next day or thereabouts, she goes back to see Tufts, right?
Yes.
Okay. So she immediately tries to reach out for help to anybody that would listen to her, right?
She was trying hard to get help.
She was trying hard to get help. She was trying hard. And then came December 20th, another bad day. Patrick drove Lindsay to Women and Infants Hospital in Rhode Island, which had a program specifically focused on postpartum mental health. Lindsay spent about 8 hours there being evaluated, participating in different activities, including group discussions and art therapy. But ultimately, she was not accepted into the postpartum program. The hospital determined she wasn't appropriate for that particular level of care. Heilbrunn had testified that Lindsay was given other options, including inpatient treatment for medication management, a general partial hospitalization program, or continuing outpatient treatment.
Well, okay. So patient plans to follow up with her outpatient provider for guidance is what you said yesterday, right?
Yes.
And she did the next day, right?
Yes.
And do you think that it's that a doctor who has been licensed as a physician psychiatrist advertising that they specialize in postpartum, postnatal issues is qualified to treat a young woman with this symptomology that she brought to that desk, to the television set?
I don't understand your question.
Well, you know that Tufts never met this girl. She never met her, ever, until she sat in that witness stand.
I understand that their treatment was done remotely.
Was remotely? So when I say the television, that's what I mean. It's like you run a Zoom, you run whatever. I apologize for that.
Yes. Yeah.
So she went the next day and actually remotely accessed a meeting with Dr. Tufts, right?
Yes.
And then she went back onto her schedule with Dr. Tufts, but that didn't help so much. Is that correct? You indicated that she was still numb. She was still having suicidal ideation, things of that nature, right?
Correct.
Okay. One of the things that you said, though, sir, yesterday is that her admission to the hospital was because they did not feel, and I quote, that she did not necessarily fit into their program. You recall that?
You mean their failure to accept her into the day program?
Their failure to help her, period. They told her to leave.
It's my understanding that what they said was that you don't fit with our program because it's not a postpartum phenomenon, and that's what the program is about.
Did you really read those records?
Yes.
Seriously?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And
So
I
tell me
wrote
again.
something about, in my report, I wrote something about it.
Wait for the next question, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
So you read the records from that Women and Infants Hospital in Rhode Island?
Yes.
On this jury, right?
Yes.
And what was the word, the language, the word salad you just said to me that they didn't accept her because of what?
Objection.
Yeah, you rephrase that.
What was it you just said to this jury? They wouldn't accept her? Why?
It was a day program for women experiencing postpartum difficulties. And their evaluation of Ms. Clancy was that her difficulties were more related to general mental health, but not particularly to postpartum difficulties. And so she did not,
Go ahead.
if I might,
Yeah, you might.
if she might be more appropriate for somebody, she might be more appropriate for a general mental health program, but not so much for a postpartum day program, which is what they had. So they didn't say that you don't need help. They just said that you don't fit with our program.
Would it surprise you to know, sir, that they said that she didn't fit with their program, as you put it, because of the overlay of over-medication that her doctors had caused to that point? Do you have any memory of that at all?
There were questions that they raised about the medication.
It wasn't just questions. They said that's the reason. The secondary diagnosis as to why they wouldn't accept this young lady is because of the medications that she had been prescribed. Over-medicated. Do you recall seeing that in those records?
Yes, I recall a diagnosis of depression, which was not specified further because there were medicine complications.
Do I have to get the medical records and read them to you?
I actually have something in my report, so
Good.
I can read it back
Can
to
you
you.
pull it out and tell me
Yes.
what the discharge diagnosis was?
Reddington then had Heilbrunn look more closely at the women's and infant records. Lindsay's discharge diagnoses were generalized anxiety disorder and depressive disorder, with the depression possibly related to adverse drug effects. The records also documented passive suicidal thoughts. Lindsay described feeling crazy depressed, numb, unable to feel love, and like her life was becoming a disaster. She later told Heilbrunn she felt hollow, like a shell or a zombie. By December, friends and family also described Lindsay struggling to get out of bed, walk, maintain her hygiene, and care for the children. One of her goals was simply to get off the medication and sleep. Heilbrunn agreed that severe sleep deprivation can cause serious problems and it can contribute to psychosis. And Dr. John definitely watched that show. That's exactly what he said. Everybody is underplaying Lindsay Clancy's lack of sleep. Even sleep deprivation can cause and contribute to psychosis. Anyway, women and infants recommended tapering Lindsay off Seroquel and following up with an outpatient provider. And this became important because the records showed that the hospital tried to contact Lindsay's nurse practitioner, Rebecca Gelada, didn't receive a call back. Heilbrunn acknowledged that he may have seen that note, but he did not include it in his report. Reddington then moved to the night of the killings. And the moment Patrick found Lindsay after she jumped from the second-story window.
Now, one of the other things that you had made reference to, Sarah, is that you relied on is when her husband came home and found Lindsay on the ground in the snow after she had jumped out the window. He spoke with her, is what you told us, jury. Right?
Yes.
And can you tell us again what it is that he said to her and what she said to him?
He said, "What did you do?" And she said, "I tried to kill myself." And then he said, "Where are the kids?" And she said, "In the basement."
Now, what is your source of that information, sir?
It was in the records, and I also did a collateral interview with Patrick Clancy.
Did you listen to the 911 tape?
No, I did not.
If I tell you, would you be surprised, sir, that she had significant damage, not only to her back, her spine, and was hemorrhaging, but also to her throat?
No, I would not be surprised. She injured herself very badly when she jumped out that window.
If I suggest to you, sir, that if you listen to the 911 tape as it relates to Patrick Clancy interacting with her, that she can only make grunting noises, would you be surprised at that?
I would be surprised, yes.
And you never listened to that tape?
I did not.
So I have seen a lot of discussions about that clip already, with people wondering if Reddington is insinuating that Patrick is lying. Yeah, I can't believe it. But I've also seen others say that while he might not actually believe that Patrick is lying, he could just be trying to plant seeds of reasonable doubt with the jury. I don't know. You'll have to let me know what you think. But I do want to say this. I was in the courtroom during that 911 call. I'm actually quite surprised that Heilbrunn has not listened to it. Yes, you can hear Lindsay speak in the 911 call. Patrick tells the 911 operator that she's in and out of consciousness. He's saying, Linz, stay with me, Linz. Hey, I'm here, Linz. And for a while she'll be out and then she'll come back and she'll say something. At one point you can hear her say, I'm scared. Very faint towards the beginning. So yes, you can hear Lindsay speak in the 911 call. And Patrick states she's in and out of consciousness. Reddington then went into Lindsay's 5-day hospitalization at McLean Hospital. She ultimately asked to be released so she could attend Cora's birthday, as you remember, birthday party. At discharge, Lindsay denied hallucinations or suicidal or homicidal thoughts. Records described her as cooperative, pleasant, no psychosis, no anxiety, and her mood as good. So Reddington pointed out, he actually emphasized this, that before leaving the locked psychiatric unit, Lindsay would have been evaluated to determine whether she was safe to go home. Heilbrunn agreed. So afterward, Heilbrunn said Lindsay seemed to have a small shred of hope. She believed getting off Seroquel might help because she thought the medication was causing many of the problems. But within about a week, her intrusive suicidal thoughts returned, and Heilbrunn agreed they were severe. Reddington then returned to Heilbrunn's timeline, highlighting the continuing insomnia, anxiety, and numb zombie-like feelings that Lindsay reported after starting medication. He focused on what Lindsay was actually doing to get better.
Chart. One of the things she also said is that she was focusing on helping the anxiety getting better through medication, right?
Yes.
It was also counseling. She went to the counseling through Latasha Dukes. Ms. Gelada was still treating her, correct?
The counseling was limited, but yes, that is correct. She was involved in some counseling.
So it was limited. Is that a bad thing? Did this woman not want to go to anybody that would help her, sir? Are you trying to tell the jury that she was avoiding help?
Sustained. Next question.
So it was limited? How was it limited?
It was short-term and supportive, as opposed to something where in the field you might pick a cognitive behavioral therapist, which is empirically supported for things like anxiety and depression and patience and things like that.
Who makes that decision? Does a person like this make that decision, sir? Is it up to the patient to make a decision of cognitive, whatever it is you just said?
Yes, it's certainly one of the things that an individual can do is looking for a referral from somebody who would be a cognitive behavior therapist or something like that. So yes.
Go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
I'm
All
finished.
set?
I'm finished.
She was focusing on trying to make this anxiety and make her feelings about her feelings go away. She wanted to be herself again, right?
Yes, that's right.
Now, there's nothing wrong with that, right? For a person to want to do that?
Not at all.
Okay. You indicated that she was concerned about resolving her problems, and the district attorney then asked you about if this is some type of her taking control of her life. You indicated that she is trying to take control of her life. Remember that?
I testified that it was important that she felt in control and that she could make things happen and improve things through focusing and discipline and hard work.
And that's what you've already agreed, that she was a person that wasn't afraid of hard work, right?
Yeah, on the contrary, she worked hard and she got a lot of results from work.
So that's not an issue that would be something that would be a black mark against her, that she's trying to take control of her life as it relates to these medications and what they're doing to her and her internal feelings of postpartum, if that's what she believed?
I was not trying to develop black marks against her. I was just trying to
I'm
describe
sorry. I thought
how
you
she
said-
thinks and
No, let him
feels and
finish.
behaves.
Sorry, you're right.
All right, next question.
I thought you said yesterday that, you put 2 marks over this category, 3 marks over this category. This is possible, that's possible. You were considering these things, right?
That was on another issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as it relates to resolving the problems, that would include talking to doctors about different medications to try, researching medications on her own. This is your testimony. Asking friends and family for tips. Really? You're supposed to ask friends and family for tips about your mental psychosis, your mental state?
I'm not sure what the question is.
Well, Dr. Helbrun testified yesterday as it relates to, in response to questions from the district attorney about her resolving of problems, including talking to doctors about different medications to try, researching medications on her own, and asking friends and family for tips.
Objection, is there a question?
Yeah, the question is that good medical advice, sir, to tell a sick person who comes to a doctor for help to go ask their friends and family for tips?
One of the things I would say is that when you want very much to improve, you, of course, ask your doctor and whoever else you're working with, but you might also ask other people in the family or friends any recommendations that they might have. That's sort of something that you do.
And when you say sort of something you do, what are you referring to? The women that come to a doctor in the postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, and ask for help, that they should go talk to their neighbors?
I think that one of the things that's kind of a natural human inclination is to talk to people who are close to you, friends and family and so on, and say, this is a problem I'm having. Do you have any advice, or can you help in any way?
And then over the course of the time that she was going through this experience into late January, she had a lot of providers offer a lot of diagnoses, and there were a lot of complicated considerations, so much so that the diagnosis that was given to her, being at that time adjustment disorder with anxiety and depressions, generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder 2, postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, postpartum stress disorder. Those are your words, sir.
Yes.
Reddington then goes through this long list of diagnoses that Lindsay had received or that providers had considered, because just in January, that included anxiety and depression, major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, bipolar 2, postpartum depression, and postpartum psychosis, among others. He also returned to Heilbrun's opinion that Lindsay was experiencing adverse reactions to psychotropic medication. Heilbrun stated, yes, that these medications are meant to improve psychiatric symptoms, but in some patients, they can make symptoms worse. And based on his review of Lindsay's records, he believed she was one of those patients.
Happen.
Look at her. You look at her, sir. Did she have adverse reactions in your mind after you evaluated her, looked at the medical records, and looked at all of the scripts that she had? Do you believe that she had adverse reactions?
Sustained as to the form.
Do you believe that she had adverse reactions?
To the medication that she had been prescribed since September?
Did she have adverse reactions, sir, up to the time of late January when you had no problem answering questions for the DA yesterday? Did she have adverse reactions into late January?
I believe she was having adverse reactions from the time she began taking the medication in October up to and including January.
Do you think that the treatment that she got from Tufts and Gelada was good?
Objection.
No, overruled.
I don't know. That's not something that I evaluated as part of my evaluation of Ms. Clancy.
You testified yesterday that she was returning to exercising in December. And then the district attorney followed up and indicated, well, she went to the Kingsbury Club in December. Remember that question?
I don't actually.
No? Do you know what the Kingsbury Club is? It sounds pretty fancy.
I don't actually.
Do you know that it's just an exercise place with a pool? You can bring your kids in a little restaurant?
Once again, I don't know what the Kingsbury Club is.
Well, there's no problem with a woman trying to exercise to try to avoid drugs and try to get herself out of any depressed state that she might be in after having a baby, right? No problem with that.
On the contrary, it's a good idea if she can do it, and it's something that she used exercise all her life
That's
to
right.
help manage her mood and do better.
One of the questions the DA asked you yesterday is about the manic state, or hypomanic state, and exercise, or things of that nature. And you answered that she did some exercise. Well, she did more than some exercise right after having Kelly, didn't she?
She did.
What did she do?
She got up at 4 a.m. She ran 3 miles. She did half an hour on the Peloton, did an exercise class. So she was doing a fair amount of exercise.
How about a road race shortly after she had the baby?
Yes, it's my understanding that she did that too. Yes.
During that period of time while she's exercising and running and road races and all the rest of it, would you agree, sir, that that coincided at the same time that they were involved with the cleaning out of the garage and removing property and selling things? Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Would you agree that at the same time she was doing the beach blanket bingo or whatever it is on television, where she's selling people things like videos and lost money doing it?
Would I agree what?
Would you agree that she was selling videos online and it turned out that it was a scam and she lost her money?
I would agree that she was involved in something like that. I didn't know
Okay,
that she
so
lost
we
her
have the
money.
exercise, we have the scam, we have the hypo cleaning, all of that. Would you agree that that is just a little bit indicative of what you said to this jury that you were struggling over, trying to find manic, hypomania? Agree with that?
I would agree that those could be symptoms of a manic episode, which I was having a hard time identifying as she was clearly experiencing something like that. But I did end up with a diagnosis of bipolar 2, and that reflected my thinking that some of those things that Mr. Reddington has just described could be symptoms of a manic disorder, although less serious than a bipolar 1 diagnosis.
Well, then Reddington, again, as you saw there, brought up Lindsay's exercise, continued talking about it. He agreed it can help with depression, anxiety, and Lindsay had used it throughout her life to manage her mood. But after giving birth, according to Heilbrunn, she was exercising intensely, sometimes getting up around 4 a.m., running 3 miles, using a Peloton, taking classes, and participating in a road race. And around the same time, Lindsay and Patrick were cleaning out the garage, getting rid of belongings, selling things. She had also gotten involved with Beachbody, or as Reddington called it, the scam that cost her money called Beach Blanket Bingo. Reddington asked whether all of this could be evidence of the hypomanic symptoms Heilbrunn had struggled to identify.
Was one of them.
Do you recall this morning indicating that you recounted that Lindsay told you that she felt, quote, like it wasn't her, end quote, as though she were watching herself commit the killings, and that she was simply responding to the voice rather than consciously deciding what to do? Do you remember saying that this morning?
I do, yes.
Would you agree that that description is consistent, almost black letter definition, with profound disassociation?
My testimony was...
No. Is that, sir, consistent with profound disassociation?
No, it is
So
consistent.
the answer is no. The answer is no?
Well, I was about to give the rest
I'm sure
of the
you were,
answer.
but the answer is no, is what you're saying, right? I just read to you what you testified to this jury this morning, right? Did I?
You
Did I
used...
read, sir? Hello, did I read what your words were this morning?
I don't remember exactly what my words were this morning.
If Dr. Heilbrunn told this jury that when Lindsay was talking to you and or Mac in the hospital, she felt, and I quote, like it wasn't her, as though she were watching herself commit the killings, and that she was simply responding to the voice rather than consciously deciding what to do, end quote. Question is, would you agree, sir, that watching oneself is consistent with disassociation?
Disassociation that is peritraumatic, which is what I testified.
So the answer is yes?
Well, you said profound dissociation, so the answer was no.
Last time I knocked out profound. I'm just asking.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
With disassociation.
It is consistent with peritraumatic dissociation.
Okay.
Yes.
And briefly, what is disassociation?
Dissociation is sort of the sense that you are removed from yourself. You're not feeling like yourself. It's something like you're in a position where your sense of time and your sense of self are altered, and it's also the sort of thing where you don't feel as if it's you anymore. Sometimes you feel as though you're watching a body that's you, but it's not really you.
And at disassociation, you'd agree, in the DSM, using that book, is in fact defined as an altered mental state. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And would you agree with me that in your evaluations of Lindsay, after you guys had the chance to speak to her and consider all of the documentation, your opinion ended up, using your words, being in your mind two possible explanations? And we talked about that, right?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And then you indicated that there were some possible things that made me believe that there was severe mental illness involved, right?
Yes,
And there was severe mental illness involved, right?
there were some possible things that made me think that it might have been a psychotic episode.
Right, but there were severe mental illnesses involved here, right?
Yes, there were.
Okay.
It's just a question of which kind.
Semantics.
Yes.
You talked about thought broadcasting, right?
Yes, I
And
did.
thought broadcasting, sir, would be if somebody hears a voice and is concerned that somebody else might have heard it, right?
No.
Hey,
Thought broadcasting.
see what thought broadcasting is. Are you aware that Lindsay Clancy indicated to anyone that she was hearing or having these intrusive thoughts in her mind? Yes or no?
Yes.
Did she indicate that she was afraid that people could read her mind or knew what these thoughts were or whatever they were in her mind, intrusive thoughts?
She was afraid of that. And so one of the reasons that I asked her about the difference between hallucinations.
All right,
Sure.
hold on, please.
I can't be more
The
clear,
question,
Judge.
all right? And then if the Commonwealth wants to follow up, they'll be able to do that.
All right.
Go ahead.
Did she, according to Dr. Helburn's review, all the information in all the hours of time,
Yes.
determine that she was afraid that people could read her thoughts or knew what her intrusive dark thoughts were?
Yes.
Who did she say that to? Just who?
Well, she said it to me.
Okay?
She said it to Dr. Mack.
Yeah, I'm sure she said it to Mac too. Put you guys aside. Who else, like people, normal people, did she say that to? Not that you're not normal, but I mean people like friends or family or citizens or whatever.
I believe she said it to Patrick.
Okay?
And she may have said it to others as well.
She may have said it to others as well. This
I
is
don't
one of the
remember
most-
who else she said it to, but she said it to Patrick.
Well, how can you come in here and testify about a young lady that is saying to people that she's having thoughts that are intrusive and dark and that she's worried that other people are reading her mind and know about it, and you don't even know who she said it to?
Objection.
No, overruled.
One of the things that she said is that her thoughts were kind of intrusive and loud and, I mean, that sort of thing. And one of the things that she said was that she thought that because of that, other people might be hearing them or might know what they were.
Like even worried about dropping little Cora off at the school, and she was afraid that the teachers could hear her voices or thoughts. Read that.
I did read that, and that's one of the reasons I asked her for the difference.
Right. When I asked you if there were any, so that refreshed your memory, that there was another person that she was concerned about.
Yes, I believe that's right. Yes.
How about her friends? Do you recall her telling her friends that she was worried about the teachers being able to read her thoughts?
I do not.
You indicated yesterday that one of the concerns or one of the issues or possibilities was at the time of the killings was acute psychosis, right?
I thought one of the possible
Is
explanations.
that, I don't want to let you run off, sir.
No, counsel, next question.
Do you agree, sir, that you testified yesterday that at the time of the killings, one of the possible concerns that you had was whether or not there was an acute psychosis?
One of the possible explanations for her motivation and her state.
So the answer is yes, right?
Objection.
No, overruled.
That's what you said yesterday, right?
Not exactly the way you phrased it, and that's what
Okay.
I'm responding to.
How interesting. I'm going to post that. Thank you for sharing, nurse of 35 years. I posted your comment just now. The questioning then turned to postpartum illness. Heilbrunn again agreed that postpartum itself isn't a diagnosis. His concern was timing. Lindsay was about 8 months past giving birth when the killings happened. He said the sources he relied on generally placed postpartum conditions much closer to childbirth, although he acknowledged that different organizations use different timeframes. I'll just point out this, the interview I did today with my friend, it was through like 18 months. Anyway, Reddington asked about the World Health Organization's guidance, but Heilbrunn said he wasn't familiar enough with its specific timeframe to answer. Reddington pressed him what he meant when he said postpartum was a less likely explanation for Lindsay's conditions.
And then you indicated, now, it could be something else, and there was certainly some stuff that I saw that were symptoms of depression and other sorts of things that she experienced in January, but it was, given the time, it was less likely, I thought, to be postpartum. What did you mean by that?
I meant that she was 8 months after giving birth to Callan. And if you look at two sources of authority, which I relied on, the DSM-5 and the Cleveland Clinic, then neither one of those would suggest that postpartum was the more likely explanation as opposed to something else.
So if we put aside the DSM, when was the DSM? Strike that. Would you agree that the DSM virtually only mentions the whole concept of postpartum psychosis, postpartum depression in 2 paragraphs?
I would agree that they don't consider it to be a mental diagnosis in the same sense that other diagnostic areas are described in that manual.
Okay. Think that should change?
Objection.
No, overall.
Do I think it should change?
Yeah, you.
The way I look at this is that the DSM-5 and the Cleveland Clinic and the World Health Organization reflect different outcomes. And I think that one of the things that they do on the conservative end is they reflect something that is basically a month, a month or 2 months, and something else on the very extended end is a good bit longer. I think it depends on a number of things in terms of how it changes, and I'm not in a position to offer an informed opinion on that, really.
Obviously.
Objection.
That'll be stricken.
Doctor, if Ms. Clancy had a genuine command hallucination, which in fact did cause her to feel compelled to carry out the killing of her children
Yes.
in herself, would you agree that she lacks substantial capacity to conform her conduct to the requirements of the law? If in fact that was a genuine command hallucination that she believed?
That would depend on a number of things. It would depend, for example.
Let's not go through a number of things. So your answer is no?
And my answer would be it depends.
Okay, so it depends.
Next question.
Would you agree, sir, that in December of 2022, she told you that at that time frame she had these thoughts that were in her head that would, quote, pop into her head, intrusive thoughts that included that her brain was damaged and that she had to kill herself. And she told you that, right?
She did.
Do you believe she was telling you the truth, sir?
Yes.
That was good.
I stand corrected in one regard, sir. This morning I started off my questions by asking you about 49 years ago when you published an article on postpartum psychosis, and you agreed. You were in college or something. But in fact, it was not postpartum psychosis. It was about schizophrenia, wasn't it?
I'd have to think back 49 years, but I think that's right. Yes.
Transcripts of interviews with 32 schizophrenic patients, 15 male, 17 female, all with primary or secondary paranoid symptomology, were edited only to delusion-relevant material Does that refresh your memory, sir?
It does.
Okay, so it wasn't postpartum psychosis. You've never written about postpartum psychosis, right?
That's right.
Okay. So finally, sir, would you agree, and if you don't, just say, no, I don't agree. Postpartum depression. Are there tests that can be administered to? I'm not talking about a guy who's upset about his job. I'm talking about a woman who's just had a baby, who's going through the postpartum period, exhibiting signs of depression and or psychosis, okay?
Yes.
All right. Would you agree with me? A person can complain that they're less able to laugh or see the funny side of their life. Is that a symptom, sir? If you know?
Are you asking me if that's a symptom of postpartum depression specifically or depression more generally?
Oh, no, I'm asking you about postpartum depression, sir. That's what I'm talking about right now.
All right.
Okay? Do you agree that a patient would complain that they're less able to laugh and see the funny side of life?
That's a symptom of depression.
All right, you're going
Could
to
be
tell me it's a
postpartum
symptom of
or it could
depression
be-
constantly. My question is, you agree that it's a symptom of postpartum depression?
Yes.
Okay.
Lindsay wanted to get back to the person she had been before her symptoms began, and she had also experienced thoughts of harming herself.
Harming herself, right?
She did.
Okay, so those are all of the postpartum depression symptoms that a person can have according to Mass General Hospital's 3-year review of postpartum depression and psychosis. So she hit all of these symptoms, right?
Those are symptoms of postpartum depression. They're also symptoms of depression.
I don't care what, I'm asking you, sir, are they symptoms of postpartum depression?
Yes.
All right. And there's a tool that psychologists can use with a woman who's coming to a doctor for help because of the symptoms of postpartum depression. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what is that tool?
I don't know what the tool is, but I'm sure there is a measure of it. Yes. Of postpartum depression.
Okay. Have you ever used that measure?
I have not.
Have you ever read about it?
Possibly.
Do you even know what it is?
I don't know what it is.
How about postpartum psychosis, sir? Same study. Hearing voices or a voice commanding a person to act. That's in the DSM, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Command hallucinations. Yes.
Delusional beliefs or distorted reality is a symptom that a person can complain of, right?
Delusional beliefs.
And
Yes. Or fixed false
distorted
beliefs.
reality.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just next statement. Confused, disorganized thinking. She had that, right? It's in your report, I think, that she was baking or making a pie or something and forgot where she was.
She was. Yes. She was having trouble with memory, attention, and concentration.
All right. Anxious and worried for no good, strike that, apologize. Severe sleep deprivation, she had that, right?
Yes.
Rapid mood swings, she had that, right?
Not sure she had that.
Well, how about the time that Patrick told you that she would repeatedly find herself in the living room on the sofa and bury her head in the pillow and rock back and forth, crying hysterically?
When you said mood swings, that implies that at one moment you're feeling down and sad and depressed, and in another moment you're feeling quite differently. So
Right, and
I
then
don't
she
see
took
that
the
the
kids.
mood swings she had.
Oh, all right, go ahead.
Go ahead, Doctor.
Yeah, I don't see that she was experiencing mood swings so much as she was experiencing symptoms of sadness and feeling down and lack of motivation, which are symptoms of depression.
What is akathisia? A-K-A-S-T-H-E-S-I-A, I believe.
Yeah, I'd have to look that one up.
Okay. Feeling overwhelmed. She felt overwhelmed.
She did, yes.
Not herself, family seeing the change, obviously, right?
Repeat the question, please.
Yeah, not herself, semicolon, family seeing the change.
Yes, correct.
Lord knows, I mean, the mother-in-law, the father-in-law, her mother, her father, her husband, neighbors, people could see the change in her, right?
Yes, they could.
So Reddington then returned to thoughts of her children. Heilbrunn agreed that this was a significant warning sign. Lindsay had experienced self-harm ideation, but when Reddington asked whether she had poor insight toward the end of January, Heilbrunn disagreed. He believed Lindsay had a fairly good understanding of where she was mentally, the difficulties she was experiencing and many aspects of her condition. And that finished Reddington's cross-examination, which meant ADA Sprague was back up again for redirect. Before we get to that redirect, it's fiery. It's interesting. Before we get to that, we have a wonderful trial sponsor that we would like to share with you. Take a listen. One thing I have learned with reporting and hidden true crime is I need makeup that works fast, because I can go from literally sitting and chilling at home to realizing, oh, we're going live in like 5 minutes. So I can spend 30 minutes to get camera ready. And that is why I love Jones Road Beauty. Their Miracle Balm has become one of my favorites because I can put it on with my fingers, no brush necessary. I immediately get this really super glowy and put together look. And it doesn't feel like I'm wearing layers of makeup. It's easy, it's natural, perfect for the days when I'm in a hurry. And I am even wearing it right now. And they have launched their new foundation stick. I am loving it for those days where I need a little bit more coverage, like today. It's buildable and lightweight, and so I can get that polished look without feeling heavy or cakey. Modern day makeup that is clean, it's strategic, multifunctional, effortless. For a limited time, our listeners, our gems, are getting a free full-size mascara on their first purchase when they use code HIDDEN at checkout. Just head to jonesroadbeauty.com and use code HIDDEN at checkout. jonesroadbeauty.com, use code HIDDEN, and after your purchase, they will ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them Hidden True Crime sent you. All right, back to redirect. She started by addressing the long list of symptoms Reddington had just gone through. She asked Halbrun whether the symptoms identified as signs of postpartum depression, if they could also occur in general depression. Halbrun explained they could. Many of the symptoms of depression including major depressive disorder. They could also appear in bipolar and bipolar II disorder. He reiterated, though, that after completing his evaluation, he believed Lindsay's correct diagnosis was indeed bipolar II disorder.
And why was that?
One of the reasons, as I testified yesterday, is that she has been in Tewksbury for 3.5 years, and that is her diagnosis of record bipolar disorder. But what that indicates to me is that having had the chance to see her, prescribe medications, and do a number of things, that they really think that she has a mood disorder of a fluctuating kind, a bipolar sort, as opposed to a major depression or some other kind of disorder.
Now, you were asked by defense counsel about the fact that you interviewed Ms. Clancy a little over 3 years after she killed her children. And your testimony was it's better to interview the person as soon as possible, right?
Correct.
But you were able to watch Dr. Resnick's interview of the defendant about 3.5 months after the incident happened, correct?
Yes.
And you were able to review all of her records leading up to when she killed the children, and then after she killed the children all the way up to present day, correct?
Yes.
Is that something that you typically have when you do these forensic reviews, that much information, medical history and information on a patient?
I had more records information in this case than I have ever had in my career.
And also, were you aware that you weren't allowed to interview the defendant until the court gave permission?
I really wasn't. I didn't know how the process worked.
But as soon as you were informed that you could meet with the defendant, you did, correct?
Yes.
And the fact that you had all of these resources, the records, the prior interviews, the recorded interviews of witnesses, the criminal file, the collateral interviews that you did that in any way aid you in overcoming whatever deficits you might have had in interviewing her 3 years later?
It did, yes.
And how so?
Because of how extensive the records were from different people, different observations, different times, and so on, they in effect created something that I would have tried to do myself if there had been fewer records available. So I would have tried, for example, to...
Well, I'm going to object to what he would have done.
No, overruled.
I would have tried to conduct a number of collateral interviews. I would have tried to go out and get some of the records myself if they'd not been available and provided to me. Usually I have to work a lot harder to get 10% of the records that I had in this case.
And you were provided with her complete psychiatric history from September through present day, correct?
I was.
Now, you were asked about being retained by our office and speaking to the prosecutors in the case. Did anyone from my office or myself or Ms. Buckingham ever tell you what your decision or what your evaluation should say in this case?
No.
And did we ever put any pressure on you in any way, shape, or form to come out on what defense counsel calls our side?
No.
And he also asked you about your interview itself with the defendant. At any point in time, was your conversation with Ms. Clancy hostile or aggressive or rude in any way?
No.
Well, Sprague returned to Heilbrun's 3-day interview with Lindsay. Despite Reddington's questions about how long those sessions were, Heilbrun said Lindsay was never hostile or rude, never asked to stop, even declined a break on the 3rd day. Sprague then asked when he formed his opinion about Lindsay's criminal responsibility, and Heilbrun said very, very late in the process, after reviewing the records, evaluating Lindsay for 3 days, and conducting collateral interviews. He said that was intentional because he wanted to avoid confirmation bias, forming a conclusion first and then focusing on evidence that supports it. Sprague then returned to Lindsay's difficulty leaving her children. Heilbrun said that mattered because if Lindsay was contemplating self-harm, she may have also been thinking about what would happen to her children without her, whether they would suffer and who would care for them. They revisited Lindsay's many different diagnoses and medications. Heilbrun said that the wide range of diagnoses made it difficult to determine exactly what was happening, whether the medications were appropriate, and whether she was having adverse reactions. Sprague started talking then about Lindsay's intrusive thoughts. Heilbrun emphasized that Lindsay generally described these as internal, not external voices or hallucinations, except for what she said happened on January 24th. She described the experiences as coming from inside her own mind. Sprague pushed back on the idea that Lindsay had been completely well until medication entered the picture. Heilbrun said Lindsay had already sought treatment because she was struggling with anxiety and Patrick's paternity leave ended and she was preparing to return to work. Then came another important point. Heilbrun said the records did not show Lindsay telling her providers or the hospitals that she was having thoughts of harming her children. Instead, her records repeatedly documented denial of homicidal thoughts and hallucinations. And with the exception of her suicidal period in December, denials of self-harm ideation thoughts as well. Her providers did not document signs of psychosis. Sprague then returned to Women and Infants Hospital. She pushed back on Reddington's suggestion that Lindsay had simply been turned away. Heilbrun agreed that while she wasn't accepted into their postpartum program, the hospital offered other options, including inpatient medication management, a general partial hospitalization program, and continued outpatient care. And the hospital explained why. Lindsay's symptoms appeared relatively late in the postpartum period and were not clearly connected to perinatal factors. Sprague also challenged the idea that Lindsay simply got worse and worse. Heilbrun said the clearest deterioration happened from October through December. After leaving McLean in January, there were signs of improvement, including better sleep and improvement in her mood. Finally, Sprague returned to disassociation, psychosis, and command hallucinations. Heilbrun emphasized that disassociation doesn't mean someone loses control of their actions. In psychosis or hearing a command hallucination, it doesn't automatically mean someone is no longer understands right from wrong or is unable to control their behavior.
You were asked about psychosis and whether someone in psychosis would automatically act on a command hallucination. And you said not be responsible, and you said it depends. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
Why does it depend?
Because symptoms of psychosis, including command hallucinations, don't necessarily take away your knowledge, your understanding, or your self-control. They can in some instances, but in other instances, they don't. And one of the things that people do to try to retain more control is things like distracting themselves, praying, doing other things that that basically make a difference in terms of supporting and boosting their self-control. And so there's no automatic connection between any mental disorder, including psychotic mental disorders, and the legal standard for knowing that something is wrong or conforming one's conduct to the requirements of the law. That's why we go through all this in such detail.
Well, next question.
Doctor, can someone who is experiencing psychosis with a command hallucination, can that person know the difference between right and wrong?
Yes.
It's way outside the scope of the question.
All right, next question.
And can someone who is experiencing psychosis conform their behavior to the law?
Same objection.
No, overruled.
In some cases, they can, yes.
And is that what you were talking about just a few moments ago, when someone can be in a state of psychosis, hearing a command telling them to do something, and they try to avoid doing what they're told to do?
Yes.
And you gave some examples, but someone trying to distract themselves with music or something like that, correct?
Yes.
I'm going to stop objecting, but I have a standing objection to the leading judge. This is my objection.
All right. It's redirect. I'll allow the Commonwealth to use a leading question to direct the witness to a certain area of inquiry, and then just non-leading questions at that point.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
All right.
Well, Red, he came back with, again, a few more questions about Heilbrun's psychological testing. Heilbrun confirmed that Lindsay's MMPI results showed no indication that she was exaggerating symptoms, that she was lying, or deliberately trying to deceive him. I have to pause. I think it's interesting. This confuses me with if she's saying she's hearing voices, right? But nonetheless, Reddington emphasized that the test was administered nearly 3 years after the killing, so it reflected Lindsay's condition when she took it, not necessarily her mental state on January 24th. And then he questioned Heilbrun about research, suggesting auditory hallucinations can be experienced as coming from inside or outside a person's head. Heilbrun said he wasn't familiar with that particular study. And with that, Heilbrun finally, after days, was dismissed. Well, the Commonwealth then had still yet another witness. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like the kid in the car on a road trip with his parents going, are we done yet? Are we done yet? No. The Commonwealth called its final rebuttal witness, Dr. Gregory Saathoff, a psychiatrist who has served as a senior psychiatrist for the FBI's behavioral analyst unit since 1996. And Saathoff is also a professor at the University of Virginia and has decades of experience in forensic psychiatry, corrections, and treating serious mental illness. He's evaluated defendants for competency and criminal responsibility, testified for both prosecutors and defense attorneys, and has treated thousands of severely mentally ill patients, including several women who had killed their children. He also had specific experience with postpartum psychosis. In 1987, Saathoff co-authored research involving 2 women who developed postpartum psychosis after taking a medication, bromocriptine. Correct me, nurses in the chat. But this medication, they say, was then used to suppress lactation. He believed their paper was the first published study specifically documenting that connection. Sprague then asked him to explain psychosis. Saathoff said psychosis is a symptom, not a diagnosis, and it can appear in several ways. Some might experience hallucinations, most commonly hearing voices. They might have delusions or fixed false beliefs, or think that their speech might become severely disorganized. A person doesn't need to experience all three to be psychotic. Saathoff compared psychosis to a fever. The symptom tells you something is wrong, but you still have to determine what's causing it. Psychosis can result from medical conditions, drugs, or psychiatric illnesses, including schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. Excuse me. Sprague then turned to Saathoff's involvement in Lindsay's case. He was asked by the Plymouth County DA's office to conduct a forensic evaluation, although he explained that he wasn't personally paid by prosecutors. Any payment went to his department at UVA, while his salary remained the same. Saathoff reviewed an enormous amount of material: Lindsay's psychiatric and medical records, hospital records, police reports, grand jury materials, videos, pharmacy records, and reports from both the prosecution and defense experts. He described the amount of information in this case as unusually extensive. Saathoff also interviewed Lindsay twice over Zoom for a total of 11 hours, separately interviewed Patrick, acknowledged that remote interviews have limitations, but he said that they didn't prevent him from evaluating Lindsay, and because the interviews were recorded, the entire interaction could later be reviewed.
Yes. So Ms. Clancy stated to me and some other evaluators that her hallucination, that of an external voice, something coming from outside of her head, occurred when she was standing at the refrigerator. She said that she was in the process of making her children their dinner when she received a call from Patrick Clancy, returned the call, and then as soon as she finished the call with Patrick Clancy, she said that is when she heard the voice. This is your last chance. You have to kill your kids and then kill yourself. And so that was what she told a number of us. There are also other accounts that she made to individuals that were quite a bit different. To Dr. Spinelli, for example, she said that the voice happened at 5:10 or 5:15 p.m. as soon as Patrick Clancy left on his errands. And that the voice, she described the voice to Dr. Spinelli as increasing in intensity, but saying, this is your last chance. You have to kill your kids before you kill yourself. But also that it was that her children would suffer if she did not do that. When I asked her about the voice that she heard, again, she said that it started really right after the telephone call at 5:34 with her husband, Patrick. And she said it was a man's voice. It was very clear. It was external. In other words, it came from outside of her head. That it was constant. So this phrase, this is your last chance, you have to kill your kids and then kill yourself, was something that was repeated over and over and over and over again during that period that she strangled her children. And then just as soon as it had started, it stopped at when she had finished killing the children, strangling the children.
Doctor, was there anything about what she reported to you about the voice that was significant to you in your evaluation, and if so, why?
Well, what was significant to me is that she had not spoken about hearing voices before that in any of the mental health professionals, the psychiatrists, the nurse practitioners, the physicians and staff in the emergency departments or at McLean. And so this was the first time that she reported that was documented, but also that she experienced an auditory hallucination, according to what she told me. So that was unusual. And then also, what was very unusual was the fact that the voice stopped with the death of, or the strangling of her youngest son, Callan, and that she went upstairs and then proceeded to engage in behavior in an effort to kill herself, but that the voice had stopped as soon as she had strangled her last Callan, her youngest child.
I could stop you there for a moment and ask you, you said that it's unusual that this was the first time that she had heard this voice. Why is that unusual?
Well, she had certainly suffered with symptoms of mental illness, depression, and anxiety, most specifically. Anxiety that she had reported to Dr. Tufts in mid-September. And then certainly the symptoms that later on included suicidal ideation and also what she said were dark or intrusive thoughts to harm her children that she mentioned to her husband and her mother on, I think, 2 occasions. And
Doctor, you also mentioned that it was unusual that the voice stopped after Callan was killed. Why is that unusual?
Well, I've worked with, compared to other patients that I've treated who have had command auditory hallucinations.
I'm going to object to that, Your Honor. Same objection that was raised before.
Counsel, can I see it?
Well, after the sidebar, Saathoff explained that in his opinion, it's not typical for someone in psychosis to hear a voice only one time, never before, never after. He also said it's not common for that voice to go on constantly for an extended period of time. He also considered it unusual for someone to experience psychosis through a voice alone without accompanying delusions. Sprague asked about Lindsay's fear that if she told medical providers about thoughts of harming her children, the children would be taken away. But Saathoff did not consider that belief delusional. He explained that healthcare professionals are mandated reporters when they believe a child may be at risk. So from his perspective, Lindsay's concern that disclosing thoughts about harming her children could lead to an assessment or intervention to protect them was rational. Again, my friend that I interviewed today had that same fear. When Saathoff reviewed the records and spoke with Lindsay, he also did not find any other delusional beliefs surrounding the alleged voice on January 24th. Sprague then asked whether it was typical for someone experiencing psychosis to hear a command and immediately act on it. Saathoff said no. Well, Reddington objected and asked for a hearing to test Saathoff's qualifications on that topic before he continued giving his opinion. But the judge allowed the testimony to proceed. So then the questioning moved to the details surrounding the phone call between Patrick and Lindsay. Lindsay had told Saathoff that when Patrick called her at 5:53 p.m. and she called him back at 5:33 p.m. and she called him back at 5:34, she was preparing dinner for the children. She specifically remembered being at the refrigerator with the door open and getting chicken nuggets for them. But Patrick gave Saathoff a different account. Patrick said that when he left the house, the children were already eating chicken nuggets on the couch. He specifically remembered Dawson eating chicken nuggets and green beans from a bowl. Crime scene photographs also showed a bowl on the couch. To Saathoff, those accounts did not line up. He considered that significant because when a forensic psychiatrist is trying to determine someone's mental state at the time of an offense, the details surrounding what actually happened matter. And here, Lindsay's account and Patrick's account are substantially different, which raises questions about the accuracy of Lindsay's recollection. The same concern applied to the different versions Lindsay had given about the voice itself. Gonna find this. Hold on.
And in terms of what you testified about earlier about the defendant giving you one version of what the voice told her and giving Dr. Spinelli a different version of what the voice told her, is there any significance in your evaluation to that?
Yes.
And what is that?
Well, again, it's markedly inconsistent. Ms. Clancy was very clear with me about the time that the voice started and that it was constant for a period of time until the children were killed, and then it stopped. And according to Dr. Spinelli's report, Ms. Clancy stated that the voice started much, much earlier, actually, when Patrick Clancy left. And so we're talking about a significant difference in time. And those two just, they don't match. So it's hard to, which version is the one that I should consider.
Well, Sprague then moved into what Saathoff described as a difference between how Lindsay sometimes appeared outwardly and what she later said she was experiencing internally. He found examples going all the way back to nursing school when Lindsay was treated for significant anxiety and prescribed psychiatric medication. But Patrick told Saathoff he didn't even know about it at the time. Saathoff said he saw similar differences in late 2022 and January 2023. Lindsay sometimes texted that she was doing well, and her social media presented a different picture from the level of distress she later described, which, let's be honest, like, social media isn't necessarily true and what we're always going through. Anyway, he focused on Lamictal, a medication used to treat bipolar disorder. Lindsay said multiple providers recommended it, and she filled the prescription, but ultimately chose not to take it because she feared a serious rash. What stood out to Saathoff was that he found no evidence she told the prescribing provider that she had decided not to take it, information that could have allowed the doctor to consider another option. He also saw differences between how Lindsay later described feeling like a zombie and McLean and what was documented in her records at the time. Saathoff said those differences mattered because doctors can only make treatment decisions based on the symptoms a patient communicates to them. He finally pointed to Lindsay's appointment with Dr. Tufts on January 23rd, just one day before the killings, when Lindsay denied suicidal or homicidal thoughts.
And did you also take note of the appointment Dr. Tufts had with the defendant on January 23rd, 2023 in the records, and the fact that the defendant denied experiencing suicidal or homicidal ideation in that meeting?
Yes.
And how was that significant, if it was?
Well, Ms. Clancy had been looking into alternative treatments and had discussed with Dr. Tufts earlier the potential for esketamine. This is an FDA-approved medication that has to be administered by a doctor within a facility, but it can have rapid positive effects in treating depression. And so in that note, Dr. Tufts wrote that the potential for esketamine treatment or transcranial magnetic stimulation were ones that they were exploring.
Now, Doctor, did you discuss with Ms. Clancy, or did she describe to you in any detail her ability to suppress her feelings and kind of mold her behavior into what she wanted people to see?
Yes.
And what did she tell you about that?
Well, I believe it was a Christmas time with her family, a morning breakfast, in which she stated she was not feeling well, not doing well, but yet felt the need to act like she was cooking and helping her husband cook. And she questioned why she would do that or engage in that behavior when her family knew that she was struggling and having difficulty. So she used the word fake with regard to just how she was attempting to present to her family. So this was on reflection in talking to me about that behavior at that time.
And did she also tell you about an incident at Spalding Hospital when she was interacting with a friend of hers who was visiting there after she went to Spalding Hospital for rehabilitation?
Yes.
And what did she tell you about that?
She told me that this friend who visited was a longtime friend from when they were both really quite young. And that when this friend visited, Ms. Clancy engaged in, trying to remember how she characterized it, gossip, really talking about kind of the old times and catching up basically on news that this friend, I believe her name was Amy Bevins, they had similar or shared experiences. And so Ms. Clancy told me she was upset at Spalding Hospital because this superficial conversation that she had without discussion of the incident of 24 January 2023, that gave an impression, maybe a false impression of Ms. Clancy, and that it hurt the friendship as a result. And she felt that Spalding Hospital had they provided better psychiatric care, better mental health care, she would not have been so superficial in talking with her friend.
Did she also express anger to you that the staff at Spalding had prioritized her spinal cord injury needs over her mental health needs?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Did Ms. Clancy tell you or express anger to you that the staff at Spalding Hospital had prioritized her spinal cord injury needs over her mental health needs?
Yes.
Then questioning turned to January 24th, that horrific day, particularly Lindsay's decision to send Patrick out on errands. Saathoff had asked Lindsay to explain how the plans for that afternoon came together. And Saathoff then asked Lindsay about how she actually took the medication. And he said that she couldn't provide many details, including how many pills she'd even taken. He found that significant because she remembered other parts of that night much more clearly. Patrick told Saathoff, Patrick later told him, at least, that Lindsay had crushed the medication into the powder. That's what we had heard too. And he found a wine tumbler beside the bed with some powder still inside. Lindsay said she mixed the medication with lemonade, although Patrick said lemonade wasn't something they typically kept in the house. Saathoff said the lemonade could make sense because crushed pills would be extremely bitter. What stood out to him was the process involved in preparing it. And I want you to hear this part because I saw a lot of discussion about this online.
Crushing pills is really a challenge if you don't have the right equipment, if you don't have like a mortar and a pestle that they might have in a pharmacy. And so what I wondered about was that process of crushing the pills to the point that they were powder in order then to put them in lemonade and then drink them. And so that is, to crush pills, significant number of pills into fine powder is not an easy thing to do, particularly if you don't have the right equipment. It's just kind of a laborious process. And she also did not. It was Patrick Clancy who told me about the door being locked, and she told me she did not recall locking the door.
And
I don't know. I don't know. I saw many people say they disagree with this, that most pills aren't hard to crush at all, and you definitely don't need a mortar and a pestle to do it. People with pets crush up pills to put their, to put the medication in the food every day. But apparently for Saathoff, that was part of what he meant when he described Lindsay's attempt at self-harm and requiring decision-making, basically having to take all of these methodical steps. He also learned from Patrick that the bedroom door had been locked. Lindsay told Saathoff that she did not remember locking it. We've heard that too. She does not remember locking the door. The questioning then returned to how Lindsay had strangled the children.
in terms of Ms. Clancy's ability to execute the strangulation of her children, is there anything about how she did it, what she did, that stood out to you in your evaluation?
Yes.
And what is that?
Ms. Clancy told me that she, after the phone call with her husband, she returned the call, that was when she took Dawson down the steps into her husband's office to strangle him. And I asked Ms. Clancy about what she remembered about what she said to Dawson to get him to go down the steps and leave, his sister and brother upstairs. And was there resistance, verbalization, et cetera, crying? And she said she could not recall that. She could only recall bringing him down the steps and then strangling him. And then she repeated that. The next child was Cora, that she went back upstairs and did not recall how she got Cora down the steps, how Cora came down the steps, but then brought her into a different area, kind of a living room area in the basement, and strangled Cora. And then lastly, that she went up to get Callan. And I asked her, I said, where was Callan? Upstairs. And she said, well, maybe in a playpen, often, she said she couldn't really remember, but then bringing Callan down. And he was the last child to be strangled, all during this time where this voice is over and over again saying, this is your last chance. You have to kill the children before you kill yourself.
Doctor, is there any significance to the fact that this voice is telling her to kill the children, but not telling her how to kill the children?
Yes.
And what is that?
Just like adults, children have a will to survive, strong will to survive. I think it's just part of being human. And so I know that Dr. Resnick described Ms. Clancy as acting as if she were a puppet. But the children are not puppets. And just in looking at the Cape Codder video where Ms. Clancy is holding Callan and Dawson and Cora are there, I mean, they both are active. They can walk, they can run. And so to make the determination about
I'm going to object to that.
All right, can I see counsel at the sidebar?
My goodness. I'm muted. Well, essentially, I'll just say this. The judge ended after the sidebar, the judge ended the day. Finally. Because, and then according to the judge, Sullivan, he was like pretty much, you know what? With the rate we're going, because Reddington still has to cross-examine this witness, we're probably going to see closing arguments Thursday. That would be tomorrow. And he called it a day. And we're going to get into that cross-exam right now because we're finally on Wednesday. And Wednesday resumed with Dr. Gregory Saathoff's direct examination and the voice Lindsay said she heard. Because Lindsay says that this voice told her one thing: kill the kids so you can kill yourself. Saathoff said it didn't tell her where or how or what order or even how to kill herself. He thinks that's significant. Lindsay had limited time while Patrick was gone, right? Patrick was only gone for 50 minutes, less than an hour, 54, I think. Yet she made those decisions, acted quickly, handled an unexpected call from Patrick during the killings. So to Saathoff, that shows she maintained control over the sequence of her actions. So then Sprague turned to the interpersonal psychological theory of suicide. Saathoff said it has three components: feeling isolated or misunderstood, feeling like a burden, and having the capability to take your own life. That last component, especially interesting, he said, because even someone who is extremely suicidal must overcome the natural instinct to survive. Saathoff then compared those components with what Lindsay told him and what he found in her medical records. Sprague returned then to the intrusive thoughts Lindsay reported during the fall and into January. Lindsay said Ativan sometimes made those thoughts go away. Saathoff found that important because Ativan treats anxiety, right? It isn't an antipsychotic, In his opinion, the fact that Ativan resolved the thoughts supported the idea that they were internal thoughts rather than external hallucinated voice. Sprague asked whether someone experiencing command hallucinations could still know right from wrong. He said yes. A person hearing a command isn't automatically compelled to follow it. They can make decisions based on their values, surroundings, and potential consequences. Sprague asked Saathoff for his ultimate opinion about Lindsay's mental state on January 24th, 2023.
Yes.
And what was that opinion?
I believe that Ms. Clancy was suffering from a mental disease or defect, and I felt that based upon the presentation, a bipolar 2 diagnosis seemed to make the most sense given the symptoms of insomnia that she had that were precipitated by the Zoloft. And this was just very, very significant. And while it didn't fulfill all the criteria or many of the criteria, if she were a patient of mine, I would diagnose her as bipolar 2 because I would want to make sure that any doctor who saw her afterwards would be very wary of using an SSRI antidepressant in treating her.
And doctor, you mentioned the drug effects, Zoloft had an effect, and SSRIs might have an effect. Is there a difference when you're treating someone and they're taking medications between being over-medicated and having an adverse reaction to medication?
Yes.
And what is the difference?
Well, when we think about side effects, that is an example of a medication having a response. Now, sometimes we have side effects when we're not necessarily over-medicated, but we put up with those side effects. When there is too much medication, certainly we can experience those side effects. For example, over-sedation, or there are some medications that can cause stimulation, so people are not able to sleep.
So then this brings questioning back to medication and the difference between side effects, adverse reactions, being over-medicated. Saathoff agreed that Lindsay experienced side effects from some medications. Most concerning was severe insomnia after starting Zoloft, going 48 hours without sleep. He considered that an adverse reaction serious enough that the medication needed to be stopped, and it ultimately was. She had problems with clonazepam and Seroquel, but Saathoff said experiencing side effects didn't necessarily mean Lindsay was over-medicated. In his opinion, her providers were responding to the symptoms she reported, and he didn't see evidence that she was being given toxic or excessive doses. He noted that Seroquel was increased fairly quickly, eventually to 400 milligrams, but Lindsay never actually took that full dose. After McLean, she was taken off Seroquel and discharged on trazodone and Valium. Dr. Tufts later added a low dose of amitriptyline. And from there, then we got to one of the biggest questions Saathoff had been asked to evaluate. Did Lindsay understand the difference between right and wrong on January 24th, 2023? Let's see.
Yes.
And what was that opinion?
My opinion is that she did have the capacity to appreciate right from wrong.
And what do you base that on?
Well, on a number of things. Ms. Clancy had just met with her psychiatrist, Dr. Tufts, the day before. And in that discussion with Dr. Tufts, as documented, she denied suicidal ideation, and she also denied thoughts of harm to others. And also there was an ongoing conversation regarding future possible treatments, esketamine or TMS, which I spoke about yesterday, that could be employed to help her. Also, with regard to the appreciation between right and wrong, the planning involved prior to the the strangling of her children, I thought was significant. The searches for distance of 3V, the searches of CVS, all done prior to her sending fairly late in the afternoon a text asking her husband if he didn't mind takeout from 3B and then adding on. So that planning, that preparatory planning, I thought was significant. The avoidance of witnesses. You know, a witness during a time when one is committing a crime can intervene, not just report, but also intervene. And so the fact that this was done without any witness present during a time where she had asked the potential witness to go on a longer errand, also I thought was significant. Concealment is another thing that I think indicated an understanding of right and wrong. I mean, the children were strangled all in the basement. And according to Mr. Clancy, the door to his office had been closed when he arrived to the basement. Timing was really, really significant in this. There was a window of time that Ms. Clancy was aware of in which she would need to kill her 3 children as well as to kill herself, which she expected would happen.
Then the next second legal question was asked. Could Lindsay conform her behavior to the law? Saathoff said yes. He pointed to Lindsay's behavior throughout January 24th. She took Cora to a pediatrician, played with the children, built a snowman, sent family photos, and prepared their meals, all without anyone noticing anything unusual. Saathoff described her behavior as organized and controlled that day, including during the killings. He again pointed to Patrick's unexpected phone call. Lindsay didn't ask for help or tell him she was in distress. Instead, she called him back and reassured him, allowing him to continue his errands rather than potentially coming home. To Saathoff, that showed Lindsay could control her behavior and conceal what was happening. So when Sprague asked for his ultimate opinion, Saathoff said Lindsay was criminally responsible when she killed the children. But then came cross-examination. Reddington was up. And first, he emphasized that Saathoff did not become involved in the case until early 2026, this year, and interviewed Lindsay months later over Zoom or television, as Reddington calls it. Saathoff acknowledged that evaluating someone closer to the crime can be helpful, but said medical records and observations are actually more important. Reddington established that Saathoff is salaried by UVA rather than paid hourly for his case. He didn't know how much the university was billing the DA's office. Reddington then went through Saathoff's extensive government and forensic work, including corrections, the FBI, crisis response, terrorism, violence, and hostage negotiation. And then Reddington tried to characterize Saathoff as a, quote, I love it, government man. He's a government man. The prosecution objected and the judge sustained it, but, he said it. Reddington then went through Saathoff's publications, which covered everything from extremism and terrorism to suicide, violence, hostage negotiations, and national security. And then he returned to Saathoff's postpartum psychosis research, emphasizing that it was published more than 40 years ago. And eventually, Reddington got to his broader point. What exactly was Saathoff's primary area of expertise and how much of his work actually involved postpartum psychosis?
Those topics correctly, sir?
Correct.
Invited lectures, talk about extremism, terrorism, the future of policing, children in long-term abductions, how to prevent terrorism, mass shooters, U.S. prisoners, religious rights, religious radicalization, terrorism and the unknown enemy. Basically, that's what your focus is, sir, correct?
No.
And that's coupled with your experience of the two people or so that you recall dealing with in your, it's not a practice, but working for the Bureau of Prisons or the state for Virginia, the people that are in jail, that is the sum total, to be respected, of Dr. Saathoff, correct? I mean, you treated two people. You've written a lot about terrorism and other issues that we went through.
That's not at all correct characterization.
Oh, I'm sorry, because I read your resume, right?
Yes.
Okay, and I related what you indicated to the jury, your experience when I asked you about patients or treating people. I said that right?
I've been treating patients, and I continue to for the last 40 years.
Now, in all of your experience, sir, have you ever treated a woman suffering from postpartum psychosis?
Yes.
When?
In the late 1980s and also during the 1990s when I ran a unit in a state hospital.
So this would be women, 1980s, about 30 years ago or 20 years ago, depending on which one, in a prison that you were.
No.
Oh, it wasn't.
In a state hospital.
State hospital. Were they
Correct.
committed? Were they there because they wanted to be there? Or were they committed by order of the court?
Yes.
Yes, what?
Usually committed.
Okay. So other than that, sir, do you have any interest, writing, knowledge about postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis?
Well, it really is a requirement when you assess and treat women to be aware of their histories and making determinations. So that has continued really throughout my career, men and women.
What did you just say? Can you repeat that again? You're treating women with what?
Treating women with psychiatric problems, serious illness, psychosis.
So when you defined for the district attorney the concept of, let's say, psychosis yesterday, were you referring in any degree to a woman who has had a baby and is in a period of postpartum depression, shall we say?
Yes.
Okay. And when and how were you treating those people?
That was during the period of 15 years when I ran a unit of men and women who came in with serious psychiatric symptoms.
So what would you do? Would you analyze them? Would you talk to them, counsel them? What would you do while they're in the hospital?
Well, do a full assessment with a multidisciplinary team and make determinations about proper treatment, proper therapy, medications, and the like to treat the symptoms.
And generally, what would the symptoms be, sir, in your experience?
Symptoms of postpartum depression?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, certainly within that period of time, around birth or after birth.
Reddington then focused on this, continued with the postpartum depression, and he agreed that the symptoms can include suicidal thoughts, guilt, difficulty concentrating, major changes in sleep. He agreed that postpartum depression can rapidly develop into postpartum psychosis. They discussed timing as well. While the DSM uses a 4-week postpartum specifier, Saathoff acknowledged that other organizations recognize much longer periods, sometimes up to a year. Reddington then asked about testing. Saathoff said there is no single medical test for postpartum depression, but there is the Edinburgh scale, a screening tool used to measure depressive symptoms, and Lindsay had taken it multiple times. Her scores ranged from roughly 19 to 23 out of 30. Saathoff agreed that anything above 15 was concerning, and Lindsay's scores were increasing over time. So when Reddington characterized that as Lindsay getting progressively worse, Saathoff actually agreed that she was getting worse as time went on. Lindsay had concerns about lamictal, and Reddington clarified that Lindsay wasn't simply worried about a minor rash from amygdala. She had researched the medication and knew there could be serious reactions. Lindsay had been prescribed a series of psychiatric medications without enzyme, metabolite, or thyroid testing. Reddington asked Saathoff directly whether he considered that overall treatment approach reasonable.
Test, there's no thyroid test, but we still have the pill factory through Dr. Tufts and then into Dr. Gelada for that period of time. You're telling this jury that that is, in your opinion, reasonable little drug doses that she was prescribed? Is that what you're telling this jury, sir?
That it was reasonable to prescribe?
Yeah, the drugs, one right after the other, and then stopping the SSRI, not weaning off, stopping it flat out. Is that reasonable?
Objection.
Sustained, just as to form.
Is it reasonable, sir, in your opinion, to tell someone who's on an SSRI, such as?
Expressed concerns that she was not following a plan and that it would have been better for her had she tried to stick with a plan.
Is that one sentence in all of the medical records where it makes reference to the fact that she said something like, I should have stuck with the plan? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. My question, sir, was Dr. Tufts, Dr. Paul, Dr. Gelada.
Nurse practitioner Paul and Gelada.
I apologize again. That's
right.
My bad. Nurse practitioner Gelada. Up to that point, bringing us into November, these people and other emergency room visits that she had, she was not going out looking to score drugs off of drug prescriptions. Is that fair?
Correct.
And she, in fact, looked up Tufts, but she didn't even know who Tufts was. She went online and Googled postpartum depression and found an expert. Isn't that right?
That's my understanding.
But she was only practicing for like a month or two. Was she, in your opinion, to a reasonable degree of psychiatric certainty, an expert?
Objection.
Overruled.
It depends on the amount of training that she received, not just as a physician and a resident, but also in the area of women's health.
Lindsay, then Reddington actually went through Lindsay's efforts to get help. Dr. Tufts, Nurse Gelada, Counselor Letitia Dukes, emergency department at Mass General. By then, Lindsay was reporting severe insomnia, feeling numb, hollow, and unlike herself. Mass General recommended inpatient treatment at McLean. Lindsay initially chose to go home. Then in December, she was referred to Women and Infants Hospital in Rhode Island for postpartum treatment. Spent about 8 hours being evaluated. Reddington kind of explained this as Lindsay essentially being turned away. Saathoff disagreed. He said the hospital believed another program was more appropriate because Lindsay was much further from postpartum than most of the women in that program. Reddington then pushed back on the idea that Lindsay had not followed treatment recommendations. After Women and Infants, she contacted Dr. Tufts almost immediately and planned to see her the next day. He also pointed out that Lindsay called the Aspire hotline, the suicide hotline, more than once, discussing suicide. Saathoff confirmed that the hotline directed her back to her healthcare provider rather than recommending hospitalization. And then they discussed Lindsay's treatment. Reddington brought it back to Lindsay's treatment at Women and Infants Hospital in Rhode Island. Reddington said that one of the concerns documented by the doctors there involved the medications Lindsay had been prescribed by Dr. Tufts and Nurse Gelada. Dr. Saathoff agreed, yeah, that was a problem. It wasn't just a matter of the doctors deciding Lindsay wasn't experiencing postpartum depression. There were also concerns about the complicated combination of psychiatric symptoms and medication she had been taking. Those medications included SSRIs like Prozac and Zoloft. Reddington then explained the physical and hormonal changes that occur during pregnancy and after childbirth. Dr. Saathoff was asked about GABA or gamma amino butyric acid and its role in the brain, which is a neurotransmitter in the body. Yeah, Dr. Reddington here bringing the questions. After the recess, Reddington returned to the hormonal changes that can happen postpartum and how they affect the brain. And Saathoff explained that neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, that one's a big one for me, norepinephrine, all play a role in mood and psychosis, and psychiatric medications can affect those systems. Reddington asked about those significant hormonal changes, how they could contribute to brain dysfunction, intrusive thoughts, impulsive behavior. Saathoff, of course, agreed it was all possible. And then there was a sharp turn back to what happened after Patrick found Lindsay outside.
Did I hear you say that Patrick is the source, the third-party collateral source of Lindsay saying, I tried to kill myself? Is that what you said? Let me rephrase it for you. I mean, did you tell the jury about an hour ago or so that
When her husband found her on the ground?
Yeah,
Yes, something to that effect.
something to that effect. Okay. And did you listen to the 911 tape when Patrick was actually speaking with Lindsay as she's laying prostrate in the snow on the ground with a broken neck and slashes and slits?
Yes, I did.
Did you hear her response to Patrick's comment? What did you do?
No,
Did you hear her respond to anything other than what would be described as guttural grunts?
not on that call.
So when this conversation occurred, and this is the conversation that you're talking about, where she said, I tried to kill myself, kids are in the basement, he then goes into the house, right?
Correct.
All right. So now we have the EMTs and people are helping her out. You've seen the medical records. You know what the injuries were. You know the damage to her throat. You know the damage to her thyroid, right?
Yes,
And is it your testimony to a reasonable degree of doctor certainty that a person with those injuries, with the prescription drugs that were crushed up, that she consumed, with a broken neck, would be able to have a conversation?
based on the witness testimony from her husband, yes.
Okay, so let's put the witness testimony from Patrick aside for a minute. And you listened to the 911 call. Are you telling this jury that she had a conversation that you could discern what she was saying?
Not on the 911 call.
No. Would you agree that they were all grunts?
Yes, from what I heard.
So Patrick goes in the house, relates the fact that he found the children, and you told the jury that his office door was closed, is what he said. Is that right?
Yes.
Where did you get that from?
I believe Patrick told me that.
Is that in your report?
Yes.
And when he told you that, when was that conversation that you had with Patrick?
When I interviewed Patrick Clancy.
Okay. So you read the grand jury minutes, right?
Yes.
You read the police report, right?
Yes.
You know that Patrick went up the stairs, and when he went up the stairs, the door was locked, right? Meaning the bedroom door, not the office door.
Correct.
And then he was able to open the door, right?
Yes. With
And
a
there
key.
was blood on the doorknob, right?
There was blood in the room on the
Describe the room.
on the floor.
Certainly, you already talked. We'll talk about that. But there's blood on the doorknob, right? Was there blood on the doorknob? If you know,
I don't recall.
do you recall there being blood drops in the area of the door itself, like where you have the threshold? But what appeared to be blood, because nobody tested it, we don't know what it is, but it appeared to be blood.
I don't recall the specific. I know that there was blood that was observed.
Okay, and you would agree that there was a lot of blood drops, drips on the mirror, drops on the floor, drops on the nightstand, right?
That's my recollection.
And you looked at the photographs in your investigation and looked at the testimony, third-party collaterals, as you testified yesterday, right?
Yes.
And you told the jurors that one of the things that was of interest to you is the fact that there was a glass or a wine mug or something that had crushed narcotics or I think he used the word antipsychotic drugs crushed up inside that cup. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay.
Wine tumbler.
Thank you. How do you know they were antipsychotic drugs?
I don't recall saying that they were antipsychotic drugs.
Oh, did you say they were drugs?
I thought I said medications.
Medications. All right, so drugs, medications, and they were crushed up?
There was evidence of powder on the tumbler that Patrick told me about, and I went back and looked more closely at the photographs and saw that.
Did you look more closely at the NMS laboratory or the state police crime laboratory or any testing that was done on the powder?
Yes.
And was there a report that said that indeed it was crushed up medication?
They wouldn't.
I mean, there is.
They didn't indicate whether or not they were pills or.
Did they ever? I'm not asking about pills or powder. Did they ever test the residue?
Not that I'm aware of.
So how do we know that that's even drugs or medications or whatever word you want to use?
It was Patrick Clancy's observation.
So basically, when you're testifying, sir, and you're waxing on about all of the facts of the case that you took into consideration prior to your opinion for the DA in this case, you're getting a lot of it from Patrick, is that right?
That aspect he brought up to me, yes.
Okay. So the crushing of the pills, was there a pill crusher found in the bedroom?
Not that I'm aware of.
Was there any residue found anywhere in the bedroom?
Not that I'm aware of.
So if someone's in a psychotic state and they're going to kill themselves and they're taking the pills, yesterday you said the fistful of pills, and then the DA said after painful questioning that they were crushed, you agreed that they were crushed. Wouldn't it be a residue?
A residue?
Yeah, you know what a residue is, right?
Yes.
Was there a residue on the table, on the nightstand, anywhere?
Not that I saw.
So there's no pill crusher, right?
Not that I saw.
There's no investigation by the police to determine what was in that powder, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
There's no indication that there's any residue on or in the actual nightstand next to the bed, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
Does it seem appropriate, sir, that a person would be in a psychotic state after slashing their wrist and slicing their throat and ready to propel themselves out a window would neatly put the bottles into the drawer of the nightstand? Or would they just scatter them around the bedroom floor, not caring?
I'm not aware of the exact sequence of the events in
Well,
terms
if I
of.
tell you, sir, that a couple of days after this incident, I went into the home with Patrick and I was able to locate in the bedroom right next to the bed with all the blood all over the place, this drawer, and inside this drawer would be a lot of medication bottles. Does that refresh your memory on your investigation as to what happened to the bottles? They're all empty.
Yes.
Okay, so how'd they get in the drawer?
How did they get in the drawer? I don't know.
You can fingerprint them, right? Did anybody do any testing at all in this investigation? If you know, you told the jury yesterday you read all this stuff, grand jury minutes, police reports, lots of witnesses.
Yeah, I did not read that.
Is it your understanding, sir, that a person can be in a state of psychosis and I guess misremember something?
Yes.
Well, Reddington was very specific when he asked the next question. Whether psychosis could cause someone to misremember events or develop false memories. And Saathoff agreed that it could. It was a great point to make. He pointed to Lindsay's claim that she cut the window screen with a turkey knife before jumping, but the screen wasn't actually cut. Still, Saathoff said he didn't believe Lindsay was lying or malingering when she told him that. Reddington then returned to Saathoff's claim that Lindsay sometimes presented herself differently to her family than what she was actually feeling. Well, Saathoff pointed out that the day before the killings, when Lindsay's parents were staying at the house, and she continued sending family photos, including one of herself and the children with their snowman that day, Reddington asked, whether there was anything unusual about a mother sending that photo to her own mother. Saathoff said no, but he believed the photo did not reflect the distress Lindsay had previously described. And that led Reddington to ask, had Saathoff ever actually spoken with Lindsay's mother? Had he ever? Let's see.
Did you talk to the mother?
Pardon me?
Did you talk to the mother?
No, I tried to.
Did you review police reports or statements? You tried to? How'd you do that? What'd you do? Call her up and say, I want to talk to you?
No.
Did the district attorney call him up?
I asked Ms. Clancy who would be good for me to speak with, and she said her husband and her family.
Okay. So based on that, what did you do?
I contacted the district attorney, and I
Which one? Which one of these two?
Ms. Sprague.
Ms. Sprague. Okay. You spoke to Jen Sprague, and what did you say to her?
Sprague.
Was it?
Attorney Sprague.
You spoke to Jen Sprague, and what did she tell you?
Attorney Sprague.
She told me that she would reach out and attempt to see if I could interview Mr. Clancy and Ms. Clancy's family.
Okay. So did you do that? Did you reach out to her mother?
Did I reach out?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Did someone tell you that she wouldn't speak to you?
Yes.
And when was this, sir? About 2 months ago?
It would have been probably June 5th.
This is August, right?
Pardon
This
me.
is August. We're in August right now, right?
Yes.
You called to speak to the mother in June, right? Yes? Come on.
Yes.
Okay. And when you called the mother, did she say?
I did not call the mother.
Okay, so the
I did
answer
not
is you
call
did
the
not
mother.
call the mother. Who told you that you couldn't talk to the mother?
Ms. Sprague.
Attorney Sprague, please.
Right. Attorney Sprague.
Now, when Attorney Sprague called you and said you cannot talk to the mother, did it ever occur to you to reach out to me? You're being objective and all.
No.
Did you know, sir, that Lindsay had signed repeatedly every and any HIPAA form that was needed by the DA or the cops to get access to every single medical record that she had? Probably going back to when she was in grammar school. Did you know that?
I know she's been open to it, and she told me that she would like for me to speak with them.
Right. And she's been open to pretty much anything and everything that was asked of her as far as signing documents, getting medical records, doing interviews, videotaping, making appointments to talk to guys like Mac and Helbrun and you in Tewksbury Hospital, right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
All of your investigation, sir, led up to the fact that you were going to meet with Lindsay 2 months ago, 2 months prior to our beginning this 5-week triple murder trial. Is that fair?
That's true.
And you told this jury that you wanted to establish a rapport with this kid?
Yes.
Do you think for 1 minute, when you're trying to put her in jail for her life, that she
Objection.
wants to talk to you and have a rapport?
Sustained. Next question.
Did you establish a rapport?
I believe so.
She was cooperative.
Yes.
She was polite.
Yes.
She was pleasant.
Yes. And I asked her at the end if there was any question that I had asked that made her feel uncomfortable, and she responded in a positive way.
One of the things that you told the jury is that you felt that she was malingering, or basically lying. I guess you were telling the jury, in your opinion, that she was making stuff up to make herself look like she's crazy when she killed the children. Is that what you told the jury?
I didn't use those words.
No, you're a little more finesse than I was. But nevertheless, sir, you're talking about malingering, right?
Yes, the statements about the auditory
Answer is yes.
hallucination.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Answer is yes. You were talking about malingering is my question. Yes or no, right? That's all.
Yes.
Okay. And when you're talking about malingering, sir, basically that would be when a person finds it in their interest to basically exaggerate or lie to an investigating psychiatrist, right?
Correct.
And that would be because it's in their interest. Like, I want to pretend that I'm crazy so a jury thinks I'm crazy and I don't have to pay for a crime. That would be in a criminal sense, right?
Yes.
Workman's comp cases, you know, a guy gets hurt in the truck and then they end up having interviews by guys like you to make sure to see if in fact they're legitimately hurt for a workman's comp claim, right?
Yes.
Or a civil case, like an auto accident, right?
Yes.
And there are tests that can be administered to people to see, from a psychiatrist standpoint, whether or not there is objective indicia of the fact that the person is indeed malingering.
Yes.
And what are those tests?
Well, I'm not a neuropsychologist, but there's a test called the SIRS, also the TOMS test of memory. So there are certain tests that can be given by neuropsychologists to assess malingering about certain aspects, certain issues.
You've also heard, I imagine, of the MMPI, which is the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory Test, right?
Yes.
And that's one that has different scales that you can examine to determine if somebody is lying or malingering or exaggerating or anything like that, right?
Correct.
And you know that Dr. Helbrun administered that very test to Lindsay about, I don't know, 2 months before you got there, right?
Yes.
Which would be about 4 months from now, where we stand now, right?
Something like that.
And would you agree, sir, that even though it would have been perhaps better to actually meet with Lindsay within the first 6 months after the incident, or a year even, or maybe even 2 years, but nevertheless, it still has reliability and validity, does it not, when it's administered to her?
The MMPI does, yes.
Okay. And you know, sir, that she, in fact, had no impact on the scales at all, with the exception of likelihood of suicide.
Yes, that's my understanding.
So Reddington then returned to Dr. Resnick, a recognized expert in filicide and malingering, who had also evaluated Lindsay. Resnick specifically considered whether Lindsay was lying, exaggerating, or being deceptive, and concluded she was not. Reddington challenged another inconsistency that Saathoff had identified because of Lindsay's account of preparing food for the children. He pointed to photographic evidence that appeared to support at least part of Lindsay's description, that she was making food. From there, Reddington returned to auditory hallucinations and clarified an important point. A genuine, hallucinated voice can be experienced either inside or outside someone's head. Saathoff agreed. And Lindsay had described hearing a loud, deep male voice coming from outside herself, commanding her to kill her children. Saathoff acknowledged that an externally experienced voice could absolutely be a genuine auditory hallucination. Reddington put the state's theory of what happened to Lindsay directly to Saathoff and asked if he agreed.
Would you agree, sir, based on your investigation, police reports, statements of witnesses, grand jury, photographs, videos, interviews of Lindsay, review of witness statements, all of that you told us yesterday that you reviewed, that in fact on January 24th of 2023, Lindsay made a calculated decision. She was a woman who no longer liked the life she thought she wanted. It was getting harder and harder for her to control. And when she saw the opportunity to escape, she made the selfish choice to take it, and to take Cora, Dawson, and Callan first, before attempting to take her own life. Continuing on, sir, she chose to manipulate her providers, seek out a quick and easy fix when she was feeling depressed and anxious, and when she didn't get what she expected, she chose the alternate route. She would seek a different doctor. She would change medications after days. She disengaged from treatment that she didn't like the plan, and after only 4 months in treatment, she made a choice, a deliberate and intentional decision that she did not want to try anymore. And because no one could take care of her kids the way she wanted them to, she had to take them with her too. Would you agree that the evidence, in your opinion, supports that contention, sir?
Well, there's a lot in that.
Yeah, it is. Do you agree that it would support your contention, sir, or it would not?
I think that statement that you read really minimizes what she was going through.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Fascinating, right? What a great lawyer in that moment. He used the prosecution's words against them. And right there, he said it minimizes what she was going through. Well, Sprague, and not Jen Sprague, not Miss Sprague, but Attorney Sprague. Attorney Sprague got back up for redirect. She first clarified Saathoff's clinical experience. And despite Reddington's focus on his government work, Saathoff said his primary role has always been treating patients with serious mental illness, hundreds of women experiencing psychosis. Sprague returned to his firsthand experience with postpartum psychosis. And Saathoff described 2 women who developed psychosis shortly after childbirth. One heard voices telling her to kill her baby and became suicidal, but rather than act on that, both women's psychotic symptoms ultimately resolved after the medication was stopped. Saathoff also pushed back on the suggestion that terrorism was his primary area of expertise. He said he considers himself first and foremost a practicing clinician. Sprague returned to the timing of postpartum illness. Saathoff said the World Health Organization guidance generally describes these disorders as beginning during pregnancy and within about 6 weeks after delivery. She clarified the testing issue. Saathoff saw nothing in Lindsay's records indicating additional blood testing was necessary. And her thyroid had been tested in November, and her thyroid was normal. So on Lamictal, Saathoff said the serious rash that Lindsay feared was very rare. More importantly, if a patient decides not to take a prescribed medication, the doctor needs to know so other treatment options can be considered. And then Sprague returned to Lindsay's severe sleep problems. Saathoff agreed sleep deprivation can contribute to psychosis, but said Lindsay's sleep progressively improved while she was at McLean. Sprague returned to something Saathoff had said on cross-exam. When Reddington described Lindsay as, by all accounts, a happy wife, mother, and daughter, Saathoff had said no. Sprague asked him to explain why. And Sprague then asked him to briefly explain why he believed Dr. Tuff's treatment approach had been reasonable. So looking at the medical notes and communications between Lindsay and Dr. Tuff's, Dr. Saathoff said he found Dr. Tuff's to be very responsive to Lindsay's symptoms and concerns. She repeatedly adjusted the treatment based on how Lindsay was doing. Sprague then returned to Lindsay's visit at Women and Infants Hospital. Reddington had suggested during cross-examination that whenever a doctor told Lindsay to do something, she immediately followed through. Sprague pointed out that Women and Infants offered Lindsay 3 different treatment options: inpatient hospitalization, partial program, outpatient program. According to the records, Lindsay said she would speak with her existing provider for guidance. Sprague asked about the records from Nurse Gelada. Dr. Saathoff recalled that there was no indication Lindsay ever discussed those 3 options with Gelada or another provider afterward. Sprague then returned to the Aspire suicide hotline calls. Reddington he had challenged Dr. Saathoff on where he'd gotten that information about those calls. Sprague brought up a December 8th, 2022 note from Letitia Dukes and asked Dr. Saathoff to review it. He confirmed that this was the record he had been referring to. The note documented that Lindsay had contacted the Crisis Support Center, spoke with an Aspire clinician virtually. She told them what she was experiencing, and it was ideation, but because she didn't have a plan, and since she didn't have that plan, a clinician determined that she did not meet the criteria for inpatient. But Sprague said that the clinician didn't just dismiss her. She said that Aspire recommended that Lindsay attend a day program and provided resources. The clinician also recommended either an IOP or PHP to help her build coping skills and a support community. Sprague then returned to Patrick's account of finding Lindsay outside.
Now, you were asked about the statements Patrick made regarding his interaction with the defendant when he found her outside in the snow. And is it correct that he told you he found her and said, "What did you do?" And she said, "I tried to kill myself."
Yes.
And did he then say, "Where are the kids?" And she said, "They are in the basement."
Yes.
Did he then tell you that he then called 911?
I don't recall exactly when he told me that he called 911. What I recall is his statement about what she said to him.
And that was her statements to him when he immediately found her on the ground?
Correct.
Okay. And you're aware that at some point he made a 911 call, correct?
Yes.
And during that 911 call that you listened to, you didn't hear the defendant saying any words at that point, correct?
I did not.
And as a physician, are you aware that someone who's been injured can deteriorate over time?
Yes, particularly after an overdose.
And can they be speaking in one moment and then unable to speak moments later?
Yes.
Now, you were also asked about the crushed up pills and whether there was any residue on the nightstand or anywhere in the house that the police saw, correct?
Yes.
And there was no residue in the photos, correct?
Not that I saw.
But you don't know when she crushed up the pills, do you?
I don't.
If she had crushed them up earlier in the day, there wouldn't necessarily be residue, correct?
Correct.
If she had crushed them up days before and put the empty bottles in a drawer, there wouldn't necessarily be residue,
Yeah.
correct?
It's sustained.
Yes.
There were many texts between the defendant and her mother in January, correct?
Yes.
And from January 7th until January 22nd, when Ms. Clancy's mother and father visited her at her home, the text messages clearly indicated that they were in two separate locations, correct?
Yes.
And in those text messages, the defendant repeatedly told her mother that she was doing a little bit better, sleeping's a little bit better, correct?
Yes.
You were asked about Dr. Resnick and how many articles and how many books he's written and how he's well known in this area, correct?
Yes.
And are you familiar with Dr. Resnick's teachings about malingering and about psychosis?
Yes.
And is it fair to say that Dr. Resnick teaches others that one of the red flags to look for in malingering?
You can
No.
ask him what he's read. I tell him what she wants him to say.
No, hold on. Let me hear the question first.
Are you aware that one of the red flags that Dr. Resnick teaches to look for in malingering and faking hearing voices is that someone automatically obeys a command?
Yes.
That's stricken at this time. Can I see counsel?
The issue of collateral interviews then came up because remember, collateral interviews are the interviewing of her family members or people that know her. And Dr. Saathoff had asked the prosecution to help arrange interviews with Lindsay's parents and her sister. And he was aware that a phone message had been left for Paula Musgrove asking whether she and her husband would be willing to meet with him on June 11th, 2026, but they did not return the call. An email had also been sent to Lindsay's sister, Allison, asking whether she would meet with Dr. Saathoff. Her response indicated that she was waiting to hear from Kevin, aka Reddington, about whether she should participate in Dr. Saathoff's assessment and would respond after speaking with him. But she never followed up. So after that, Sprague had no further questions. Reddington briefly took over again to clarify one more thing.
You could say, maybe get a little closer to the microphone. I had problems.
Aware, sir, that during the time that Olga, her sister, said she's waiting to hear from Kevin, and I'm the Kevin, that I was on trial on a month-long federal case out of my office. You didn't know that, did you?
I did not know that.
Did you ever think to call me directly or at my secretary, my office manager, to ask about me reaching out to these people?
No.
That's all I have, Judge. Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
I thank you, doctor. Let me
Thank
accept
you.
that. Thank you.
So after that, the Commonwealth, guys, believe it or not, the Commonwealth rested its case. And the judge addressed the jury and explained what would happen next. Yeah, tomorrow's a big day. Tomorrow they will hear closing arguments, get their jury instructions, and then begin deliberating. So after the jury left the court and it moved into a conference. So Reddington first, a charge conference, Reddington first renewed the defense's motion for a required finding of not guilty. The Commonwealth objected and the judge denied it. From there, they went through the judge's proposed instructions, starting with criminal responsibility. The Commonwealth didn't have major objections to the basic criminal responsibility instruction, but they did object to the portions dealing with intoxication from prescription medications. Buckingham argued that there wasn't any evidence that Lindsay had been so impaired by her medications on January 24th that she wasn't able to form criminal intent. She pointed out why she felt that way. And Reddington ultimately, though, agreed with the Commonwealth on one point. He said he also didn't believe the jury needed an instruction on voluntary intoxication, since this wasn't a case involving someone intentionally taking illicit drugs. So both sides agreed those portions should be left out. And the judge said he was strongly inclined to do that. They went through additional points to make that they need in the jury instructions and sort of explain, this is what we want, this is what we don't want, and the defense or the prosecution agreeing or disagreeing, and the judge essentially deciding ultimately what will be in jury selection, or not selection, instructions, jury instructions, and what won't be in jury instructions. We have new information. Sorry, the pause. So 1 second. Getting new info. All right. So Reddington asked the judge to make clear that when the jury considered whether Lindsay understood the wrongfulness of her conduct, that could include whether she understood it was morally wrong, not simply whether it was illegal. And he objected to some language about the abnormality characterized only by repeated criminal conduct, arguing that it didn't really fit the evidence in this case. So he asked the judge to remove language saying all that you need to determine, because he felt that minimized the seriousness of the issue for the jury. The more significant dispute came when they reached, here you go, manslaughter. Manslaughter is back on the table. So the Commonwealth objected to giving the jury an involuntary manslaughter instruction. Buckingham relied on the Massachusetts case involving an intentional battery and argued that conduct like strangling someone, which is obviously capable of causing death, should not be reduced to involuntary manslaughter simply by calling it wanton or reckless. But Reddington disagreed. He argued that if the jury believed Lindsay intentionally committed the acts that caused the deaths, but didn't find the mental state necessary for murder, and also didn't find that she was legally not criminally responsible, then manslaughter needed to be available as a middle ground. He argued for voluntary manslaughter based on diminished capacity. His position was that even if the jury rejected the defense's claim of postpartum psychosis and decided Lindsay was criminally responsible, they could still find that her postpartum depression and her impairment affected her ability to form the level of intent required to murder. Reddington specifically said he didn't believe the evidence established postpartum psychosis, but he argued there was still evidence that Lindsay was suffering from postpartum depression, taking multiple psychiatric medications. In his view, that evidence could affect the jury's assessment of malice, premeditation, and whether she was capable of understanding the full wrongfulness or cruelty of what she was doing. He then raised another issue involving prescription medication, this time asking the judge to consider an instruction on involuntary intoxication. So now he's kind of flipping. His argument was that Lindsay wasn't abusing illegal drugs or intentionally getting intoxicated. She was taking medications that had been prescribed to her, and the defense had presented evidence about the potentially serious psychiatric efforts and warnings associated with some of those medications. The Commonwealth opposed that as well, arguing that there wasn't a separate instruction that fit the circumstances and that the defense was free to argue the medication evidence when discussing intent and criminal responsibility. The judge actually pointed out that some of what Reddington wanted could be already covered by manslaughter instruction. The proposed language allowed the jury to consider evidence of mental impairment or the consumption of prescription drugs. Reddington agreed that if the judge fashioned the instruction that way, it could cover both the voluntary and involuntary manslaughter theories without labeling it as either one. So then Reddington made one of the defense's other major requests. He asked for an instruction concerning the police investigation. The defense wanted the jury instructed that they could consider deficiencies in the police investigation when deciding whether the Commonwealth had proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. Reddington pointed out and argued that this wasn't just a case of a few things being missed. He described the investigation as essentially no investigation at all. He said police had accepted almost immediately that Lindsay had strangled the children and moved on without adequately investigating other physical evidence. He pointed to questions surrounding the window screen, blood evidence, the door and siding, the medication bottles, whether there was evidence that medication had been crushed. He argued there were numerous unanswered questions because investigators had not thoroughly tested everything. They hadn't preserved pieces of evidence. Well, the Commonwealth, of course, strongly disagreed. Buckingham said the defense could certainly argue any alleged problems with the investigation during closing arguments, but she didn't believe the evidence supported giving jury a special instruction about this. She pointed out that there were photographs of the screen taken off the day of the incident, testimony about the window and the blood outside the house, and testimony explaining why certain evidence wasn't collected immediately. She noted that investigators later returned to collect evidence and that testing established that the blood outside belonged to Lindsay. As for the medication bottles and drawer, Buckingham acknowledged there were questions about those items, but said the jury had heard testimony explaining why they weren't flagged or tested in the way the defense wanted. So, here we go. After hearing both sides, the judge made his decisions. He said he would give a manslaughter instruction based largely on the language already contained in his proposed instructions. But he would not give the instruction for the intoxication, or he would not give the instruction for the bad police investigation, as well as the involuntary intoxication instructions relating to criminal responsibility. So the voluntary intoxication instructions were going to be left out, with both sides agreeing that the evidence didn't support them. The defense would still be allowed to argue all of its points about the police investigation, and Reddington could argue that those alleged deficiencies created reasonable doubt. He just wouldn't have a special instruction from the judge, right, telling the jury how to consider those deficiencies. So, heading into closing arguments tomorrow, the jury was going to have several possible paths now in front of them. Finally. I mean, because we were like two extremes this case. They would hear the instructions on first-degree murder, including deliberate premeditation and extreme atrocity or cruelty, as well as second-degree murder. This is huge. They would also have a manslaughter option with the ability to consider the evidence of mental impairment and prescription medications in that context. But they would not be specifically instructed on voluntary or involuntary intoxication. That's not what that is. They would not receive that special instruction that the defense had requested. One of those decisions were made. Once those decisions were made, the judge told the attorneys he'd have a cleaner, final version of the instructions ready the next morning so they could prepare their closing arguments. It was really a huge moment. There is now a third option, second-degree murder. So outside the courtroom this afternoon, Reddington talked to some reporters and discussed what he hopes to convey to the jury tomorrow. He also had something to say about Patrick Clancy as well, which was very interesting. Take a listen.
Same pretty much.
The best thing for women's health ever.
Thank you.
Ever.
Appreciate it.
I asked you this morning, Mr. Reddington, what you hope to convey in the closing. You didn't really have an answer.
No, I don't. I hope to convey that I truly, care and love. I love her. She's just such a marvelous, sweet, innocent person. She's just amazing and so strong and just trying so hard to get up from. She's just been beat down for 3.5 years, and she feels that he's had a fair trial with the judge, and the jury's been very attentive, and all we can do is hope for the best.
You may not answer this, but the women that support her, do you want to say, has she said anything about women raising postpartum psychosis?
She's very concerned, especially as a labor and delivery nurse. She's very concerned about women's rights, the fact that women are pretty much marginalized. I think it's readily apparent. The DSM is a joke. I couldn't get into the social implications in the trial, understandably. But if the United States would take a lesson from Europe, Belgium, England, France, Peru, a lot of these countries, they take care of their women that have psychosis, keep them with their babies. They don't rip the babies away from them and put the women in jail, where we do.
Did Lindsay speak when she was outside on the ground? Because it was confusing that the psychiatrist said that Patrick said she did.
I wouldn't believe him if he said in the middle of a blizzard that it was snowing out, okay? So I don't care what the psychiatrist said. You heard that, well, no, you didn't, unfortunately. If you were in the courtroom, you would have heard the tape. She was unable to speak. She just moaned and made grunting noises, that's all.
So why would Patrick say that?
How do I know?
All right, at the charging conference, you were talking about the investigation, the police. Do you think that's something that you're going to bring up in closings?
It's a difficult, if you remember back to when I filed the motion for the bifurcation, I was arguing to the judge, it's difficult because a defendant on the lack of criminal responsibility, defense has to basically admit that he or she is guilty before you're able to do that. So you're not able to attack the issue of whether or not the government can prove that the person did the case, but that still is in play. They still have to prove that she was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And then if in fact she's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, then you get into the issue of lack of criminal responsibility. So that's the dilemma that we have. And that's why I filed the motion to bifurcate. So the issue is, yeah, it's still open and it's up to a jury to decide either way.
Really interesting that he's talking so freely to reporters. So tomorrow's a big day. We'll be watching, we'll be covering, and we will see you tomorrow night. Yes, we do have another YouTube video that was posted earlier today. I hope you guys all watch it, especially for those that are up and watching. Go check out my interview that I posted today, exclusive. I had postpartum psychosis and intrusive thoughts. Postpartum psychosis exclusive interview. Go check it out. I think it's so interesting as I've been processing this case. So check it out. Thank you everyone for being here. And thank you for the gifts. Thank you for your questions. It's so late. I always stay up to ask questions, but we're 3 hours in. So I'm going to take off early, but thank you for your support of our channel. And we have the Sam Bateman victim impact statements coming for all of you, as well as an interview with a juror that attended that sentencing. So stay tuned, hit subscribe, hit notifications, and thank you so much for being our gems. We'll see you.